good afternoon. Oh, it's not afternoon. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, we're off to a great start. Happy New Year. And welcome, everyone. We're happy to have everyone here today. Today is Tuesday, January 6th, 2026, and we're here for the purpose of discussing the Hungerford property. The general public will not have an opportunity to participate in this morning's work session to provide public comment because this is not a regular scheduled school board meeting. No action will be taken today, and there'll be no open public comment period. We want to thank everyone that's here today for joining us, and to my fellow board members, district staff, and anyone speaking into the microphone to the board and the public. Please make sure that the microphone's turned on. Speak directly into it so our YouTube and Orange TV viewers can hear you clearly. And so now we will take a moment, pause for a moment of silence, and we'll invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And now for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'm going to call on the superintendent in just a minute, but I do also want to recognize we have members of the esteemed members of the Town of Edenville Council, and we're pleased and thrilled to have you with us. We have members of the Dr. Phillips Foundation, including the Chief Executive Officer and President of the Dr. Phillips Charities, Ken Robinson. Great to have you with us, and have a really, really important topic that we're going to be discussing today. And so with that, let me turn it over to our superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Happy New Year to everyone. On September 30th, the school board voted unanimously to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Dr. Phillips Foundation, or Dr. Phillips Charities. Since then, the two entities have been working on a proposed contract. The purpose of today's work session is to present elements of the proposed contract and give the board an opportunity to have discussions and ask questions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our General Counsel for the presentation. Mr. Palmerini.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent, members of the board. Do you all see the PowerPoint in front of you? Because I do not see it up on the screen. Technology. Sorry. Do you all have it? You see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, members of the board, members of the town council, Dr. Phillips Charities. As the superintendent stated, this is the presentation on the draft contract between the school board and the Dr. Phillips Charities with regard to the Hungerford property. Did want to give just a brief overview of where we've been. As you all will remember, on September the 30th, the board voted unanimously to enter into the memorandum of understanding with the Dr. Phillips Foundation. The Dr. Phillips Charities agreed to negotiate a fair purchase price in that MOU for the Hungerford property. They did agree to pay $1 million upfront in exchange for a transfer of the property, and there would be a remaining balance that would be negotiated of the purchase price, and that remaining balance would be forgiven upon the achievement of certain milestones. And I just wanted to go over what those milestones were in the September 30th, 2025 MOU. By the end of year two, there would be significant progress on infrastructure, including development of extensive green space and a pavilion for community festivals. By the end of year 3, there will be completion of an Eatonville Early Learning Center. In there was enrollment priority would be given to residents of the town of Eatonville and the children of teachers and support staff employed at Hungerford Elementary, our elementary school. By the end of year 4, there would be establishment of a community hub and a healthcare facility, and that would be named with resident input from the town of Eatonville. There would be a town center and a history center / museum. Land would be set aside for construction of a town center and a history center / museum. The land would be donated for the town center and the history center upon construction once construction funding was secured. And as part of that deal, in consideration for the donation of land, is that the students attending schools operated by the School Board of Orange County, Florida, will be given free admission to the History Center Museum owned and operated by the town. The agreement also contained milestones for affordable housing. It said any affordable deed-restricted single-family housing would have a preference for the residents of the town of Eatonville, instructional and education support employees of the school board, and first responders employed by the town of Eatonville. For affordable dwelling units, a percentage would be made available for seniors with modified annual fees. And the MOU said approximately 4 to 6 acres would be transferred by a deed to the town of Eatonville for a multifamily affordable housing project. Again, our employees would have gotten, our instructional and educational support employees of the school board would have gotten priority for some of those multifamily units of affordable housing. So on September 30th, the board, in approving the MOU, did a couple things. One, it declared the property at Hungerford no longer needed for educational purposes under 1013-28. And the board also found that the MOU was in the best interest of the public. Of course, that statute requires that any sale be completed in the best interest of the public. And the board, in approving that MOU and resolution, did that on September 30th. So coming out of that MOU, we then had to sit down and negotiate a purchase and sale contract with Dr. Phillips Charities. And over the course of October, November, and December, my staff and outside counsel Chris Wilson and Sergio Ruiz, our staff attorney for construction, engaged with Dr. Phillips and their lawyers at Lowndes to negotiate a purchase and sale agreement. So we are here today. We have a draft of it. It's been provided to the board. It's been provided to the town. I believe it was December 19th, both provided to the board and to the town. And what I want to do is go over some of the provisions of the contract. I'm not going through every last provision of the contract. A lot of it's legal boilerplate that makes my eyes glaze over, and I'm actually paid to read legal boilerplate, but I did want to hit the high points of the agreement for the board. So, highlights of the agreement, paragraph 4. The purchase price for the agreement is $14 million. $13 million of which may be forgiven based upon certain milestones being met. $1 million is going to be paid at closing. So it is a $14 million contract, and you will see that there are certain amounts being forgiven for certain projects that are being contemplated in this agreement. And it requires good faith, commercially reasonable efforts by Dr. Phillips Charities, and we'll talk about what that is. But it is a $14 million contract, but up to $13 million could be forgiven based upon meeting milestones. Paragraph 5 talks about the Florida Department of Transportation acreage. So just to give the board knows this history, but to give members of the public some history, in 2008, we completed a sale to the Florida Department of Transportation. As you remember, I-4 was being expanded, widened, and they had some need for drainage coming off of I-4 and needed some of our property. So it was about a 5-acre tract. We were paid $6.4 million for that property. And now we are in the midst of negotiations with the Florida Department of Transportation. We're close to finalizing an agreement on that, where they will convey the property back to the district at no cost, provided that we give them a drainage easement over the property in perpetuity. So there was some uncertainty from Dr. Phillips about the nature of the property. And what we agreed with respect to the FDOT parcel is that they will, during the inspection period, which is 180 days, they will go ahead and inspect the property, they being Dr. Phillips. And let me make sure I'm clarifying my pronouns. Dr. Phillips will inspect the property, and then we will sit down with them to negotiate terms and maintenance obligations and rights with respect to the property during that inspection period. So Dr. Phillips is going to go ahead and inspect that portion of the property, and we may be coming back to you with an additional agreement with respect to that 5 acres. But that's how we're handling it. Dr. Phillips will inspect. We will then re-engage on negotiations to see what, if any, changes need to be made to the agreement. Paragraph 6, and this paragraph is the paragraph which highlights the portions of the purchase price which would be forgiven based upon completion of milestones. So the first is a community green space and pavilion. 3 acres will be dedicated for the community green space and an outdoor covered pavilion of at least 4,000 square feet. Upon completion of the community green space and the pavilion, $5 million of the purchase price would be forgiven. Construction will begin within 2 years of the closing date of the sale, and it will be completed within 1 year of construction being commenced. And following completion of construction, the green space and pavilion will be donated to the town of Eatonville. The next provision is the Early Learning Center. The Early Learning Center will be no less than 3,000 square feet, and it will be engineered, permitted, constructed, and granted a certificate of occupancy within 3 years. If this is accomplished, $5 million of the purchase price will be forgiven. And to the extent permitted by law, the children of the faculty and staff at Hungerford Elementary will be given enrollment priority at the Early Learning Center. So to the extent permitted by law, I know there was some questions with regard to that. We're not aware of anything that would prohibit that enrollment priority, but in case there is any legal dispute, this is basically being put in there for, severability purposes. In case some portion of the agreement were ever to be held unlawful, we could sever it out and the rest of the agreement would remain standing. But there is nothing in our research that would indicate there's anything unlawful about our staff's children getting enrollment priority at the Early Learning Center. The Community Hub Healthcare Facility. That Community Hub Healthcare Facility will be engineered, permitted, constructed, and be granted a certificate of occupancy within 4 years. Within 1 year of the closing date, Dr. Phillips will obtain formal approval from the town of Eatonville for the project. If the town of Eatonville fails to approve the Community Hub Healthcare Facility or fails to have a vote of the Community Hub Healthcare Facility after commercially reasonable and good faith efforts by Dr. Phillips Charities, the Community Hub purchase price of $2.5 million will be forgiven. If the Community Hub Healthcare Facility is built, the $2.5 million of the Community Hub purchase price will be forgiven. The Community Hub shall be named by Dr. Phillips after soliciting input from residents of the town of Eatonville. This is one of the provisions with respect to that. Commercially reasonable and good faith efforts, we talked about that. Commercially reasonable and good faith efforts, as we contemplate it, is Dr. Phillips takes the affirmative steps necessary to go to the town, to apply, to build this facility, to try to obtain a vote from the town. And through those efforts, if they apply, if they ask the town for a vote, and if the town either doesn't hold a vote or votes it up or down, that to us would be commercially reasonable and good faith efforts. What would not be commercially reasonable and good faith efforts is if the town did, or if Dr. Phillips did absolutely nothing to try to push this Community Hub Healthcare Facility forward, if they didn't apply to build it, if they didn't do what was necessary to obtain the town's approval. So we don't anticipate Dr. Phillips failing to make an effort. Given their conversations with us, they are ready to make said efforts and to commit to building these projects. So we don't anticipate that Dr. Phillips not making commercially reasonable and good faith efforts, but that provision is in there to ensure that contractually we have a mechanism to ensure that they are making those efforts. The Town Hall History Museum, a portion of the land not to exceed 4 acres will be set aside for construction of a new town hall and a history museum. Dr. Phillips Charities will identify the legal description of the town hall parcel within 1 year of the closing date together with any condition that the town is required to meet for donation of the town hall parcel. Upon conveyance of the portion of the property to the town, or after the town refuses conveyance after Dr. Phillips' commercially reasonable and good faith efforts to donate, this condition will be deemed satisfied and $500,000 of the purchase price will be forgiven. Again, if Dr. Phillips approaches the town, say we want to build your town hall and your town museum, and we've identified this portion of the property to do it, and the town says they can't reach an agreement, that would be a commercially reasonable and good faith effort. If there is no effort whatsoever by Dr. Phillips, that would obviously not be met there. Affordable housing. There, to be clear on this, there is no portion, let me try that again in English. There is no portion of the purchase price, how's that for alliteration this early on a Tuesday morning, that is being forgiven. There's no forgiveness of a purchase price here, but this describes the affordable housing efforts that Dr. Phillips will undertake. As with the MOU, any deed-restricted single-family affordable housing will be initially provided to the then-current residents of the town of Eatonville, the then-current instructional and education support employees of Orange County Public Schools, and first responders then employed by the town. Any deed-restricted single-family affordable housing will reserve 10% of the units for sale to seniors age 55 and older. Approximately 4 to 6 acres of the property to be set aside for multifamily affordable housing. The location of and size of affordable housing shall be determined by Dr. Phillips within 4 years of the closing date. Dr. Phillips will provide written notice to the district and town once it determines the location and size of affordable housing. The notice will include reasonable conditions and restrictions, which may include the right of first offer of sale to instructional and education support staff of OCPS. The town will then provide a vote on the request to develop affordable housing by Dr. Phillips within 90 days. The designation of affordable housing will expire and be of no further force and effect if the town fails to consider or denies the affordable housing notice within 90 days. Affordable housing will be provided within 10 years of the closing date, and again, there's no price being forgiven here. So I think Dr. Phillips is contemplating going to talking with the town about, respect to affordable housing and how that's going to be planned going into the future. I mean, there's talk about the town's housing plan. That's all discussions that Dr. Phillips and the town will have subsequent to the purchase and sale of this. Paragraph 6, again, the Dr. Phillips Charities shall work in good faith, using commercially reasonable efforts to obtain satisfaction of the above conditions on or before 10 years of the compliance date. So we're giving them a wide runway in this agreement to get everything done before we talk about whether or not what payment of purchase price is necessary. So if there's a complete lack of good faith efforts by Dr. Phillips to meet all of the conditions above, so let's say Dr. Phillips purchases the land and they do absolutely nothing, and they do absolutely nothing for the 10-year compliance period, they would then owe us $13 million, the remainder of the purchase price. Again, we do not anticipate Dr. Phillips will do that, but that is in there in case that there's absolutely no effort to develop the property. If Dr. Phillips works in good faith but is not able to satisfy any of the condition above, meaning they don't build the community green space pavilion, the early learning center, the town hall and history museum, and the community hub healthcare facility, and they don't do any of it, but they've made good faith efforts to do all of it, then the Dr. Phillips will pay the district $6.5 million, or half of the $13 million purchase price, within 30 days of the expiration of the compliance date. So if they make their good faith efforts and they don't do any of it because for whatever reason they can't reach agreement with the town, they don't get the appropriate zoning, comprehensive plan necessary, or their building application is permitted, but they've made good faith efforts, they'll pay us half. If Dr. Phillips Charities works in good faith and some of the conditions are met but others are not, then the amount identified in the condition as being waived will be waived, but Dr. Phillips will pay half of the identified price for the conditions for those not completed. So as an example, if the community green space and pavilion is built then the $5 million of the purchase price will be waived. But if the Early Learning Center were not to be built and they've made good faith efforts, $2.5 million, or half of the $5 million we would have waived if the property was complete, or if the Early Learning Center was completed, they'll have to pay half of that purchase price of $2.5 million. All right, paragraph 7. There's an inspection period of 180 days for testing for hazardous and toxic substances, waste, materials, pollutants, contaminants. That's rather standard in these types of agreements. Paragraph 10, closing is 45 days after the expiration of the 180-day period. Except as otherwise noted in the agreement, we're selling the property as is, meaning we're making no representations as to the condition of the property, but they're going to go ahead and inspect the property during that 180-day periods. Paragraph 19, as to Dr. Phillips' charities and the board, Dr. Phillips agrees that our liability is subject to the limitations set forth in Section 768-28, and Dr. Phillips has agreed that the board does not waive its entitlement to sovereign immunity as a matter of constitutional law, statutory law, and common law. We don't think we're going to need these provisions given our working relationship with Dr. Phillips, but these provisions are there to protect the board in case that becomes an issue. So I then wanted to turn really briefly to just some questions that were had during the whole portion of reviewing this contract and sale. What happens to the proceeds of the sale when we get the money? That's controlled by the state requirements for educational facilities. That's the state adopted rules about how we construct, build, and dispose of property. And under SREF, proceeds of the sale shall be credited and shall only be expended on capital outlay projects. So money that we gain from sale of property has to go back into our capital outlay budget. And then we've had this discussion before, but I just wanted to discuss the statute in terms of, the best interest of the public. So under the statute 1013-28, when disposing of property, the board shall only do so in the best interest of the public. And so I wanted to discuss the best interest of the public in the context of this agreement. The board's interest in having the Early Learning Center being built. Obviously, the board has an interest in having that Early Learning Center being built. That means children are going to get early childhood education. They're going to come to elementary schools that we operate better prepared to achieve once they get there. And they'll be better positioned. I think the studies are legion that the earlier education starts for children, the more they come in advance and the better they do throughout their academic careers because they had that basis early. That is certainly in the best interest of the public, in our view, as contemplated under 1013-28, for students to come to our schools better prepared to learn. With respect to the community hub and healthcare facilities, having our children be healthier, when they are getting treated at medical facilities for any illness or disease or any ailments that they have, rather than getting that treatment at a healthcare facility, rather than putting the strain on our resources to deal with those children when they're at school. Obviously, we will take care of children who get ill at our schools, in our clinic and through clinic services, but having children come to school healthier is in the best interest of the public. Having students being able to come to school more and not be absent because they have access to healthcare facilities within their area is in the best interest of the public, in our view, as contemplated under the statute. I don't mention it in the PowerPoint, but obviously with respect to the History Museum and our children going to the History Museum, obviously that is an educational benefit for our children and in the best interest of the public for our children to go and have access to high quality instruction and presentations with respect to African American history and the history of the town of Eatonville. And we think that would be in the best interest of the public for our students to have free access to a history museum where they would get the history of the town of Eatonville and the African American community in Greater Orange County. With respect to affordable housing, obviously having housing that's affordable for our employees, our instructional staff and support staff is in the best interest of the public. As we know, one of the barriers that we have in hiring and retaining instructional and support employees is access to affordable housing so they can live in Orange County and work here. And the state has recognized that, actually, because one of the express authorities that this board has with respect to what it can do is providing affordable housing for its employees. So Section 1143, subsection 12, states that a school board may use portions of school sites purchased within the guidelines of SREF, land deemed not usable for educational purposes because of location or other factors, or land declared surplus by the board, may be used to provide sites for affordable housing for teachers and other district personnel. And now the board can be in charge of itself of building affordable housing, although we don't do construction in that kind, we don't do housing construction. So it says we can do it independently or in conjunction with other agencies as described in subsection 5 of 1143. So an agency described within subsection 5 of 1143 are business community partnerships. Obviously, a partnership and an agreement with Dr. Phillips Charities would constitute a business community partnership with respect to building affordable housing. So having our employees have access to affordable housing and priority for it is something that would be in the best interest of the public and in support of this sale. One of the last things that I wanted to raise is one of the issues that was raised was development of a strong tax base, right? So I do want to point out that this agreement and the things that we've just discussed, the community hub healthcare facility, the town museum and the town hall, the pavilion and the early learning center, that takes up a smaller portion of this site. So it is not the full 100 acres that we are contemplating selling here. So there is a great deal of property that is still available, that is available for discussions between Dr. Phillips, who would be the landowner, and the town to talk about what kind of commercial development, what kind of tax base are we going to have in here. So that is one of the things I wanted to point out. This is not the exclusive, this purchase and sale contract is not the exclusive usage of the property, right? So it's going to be open for development of commercial development, retail establishments, restaurants, grocery stores. There's going to be large portions of that property available for that. And I do want to remind, for those of you who have been on the board for a while, and for this is a reminder for those of you who are newer to the board, it may be some new information. We had an agreement for purchase and sale of this property back in, I believe it was 2019. And part of that was we were going to, on behalf of the town, put out a request for proposal to get development entities to go ahead, purchase the property, and we were going to get, I believe, $10 million of the proceeds for that property, and the town was going to get $4 million of the proceeds of that sale. And there was going to be development on the site. And so we had to go through, I think it was a couple RFPs. You know, COVID was in the midst of this, so, you know, it shut down our processes for the better part of a year. We did put out an RFP. We got a vendor, and they presented development plans that necessitated a comprehensive plan amendment by the town of Eatonville. It would have brought this commercial redevelopment, and the town declined to do the comprehensive plan changes. So we have been down this road before. We are hopeful that Dr. Phillips and the town, upon completion of the sale, can work together to find, you know, things that will be commercially viable within the town, that will develop a strong tax base for the town, and there's property left over as part of this purchase and sale for those discussions to occur. It does not in any way eliminate commercial development within the town. So that is the basics of the agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmerini.
Thank you. We are now prepared to have discussion and answer any questions the board might have.
All right, thank you, Dr. Vasquez. We have a number of board members who have questions. We also to be here to respond to any questions the board has or any issues that are raised. We appreciate you here. Do you have any comments you want to make before the board undertakes discussion? Okay. And we also, as the board knows, we've invited the town council from Eatonville to join us so that they can provide their thoughts and inputs, having had a chance to review the agreement, the proposed agreement. Board's pleasure. Would you prefer to ask your questions now, and then we'll hear from, okay, or we'll do that, and then we'll open it up to comments from the council, and then we'll take that into consideration as well. Let me begin with Member Gallo. Member Gallo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do have a couple of questions in regards to the agreement when Dr. Phillips acts in good faith. If Dr. Phillips Charities and the town of Eatonville are unable to come to a consensus, what happens to the property? Like, we're waiving the fees, but then what happens to the property? Does the property then go to Eatonville? Does it stay with Dr. Phillips? What happens to that property if it's not developed?
Property would stay with Dr. Phillips. They would be the owner of the property.
And would they then get to decide what happens? Well, it would still have to get approved by the town council, whatever is built.
That's correct.
Okay. And then on the Early Learning Center, which I love because, as you mentioned, it's a precursor to really having students be successful in our schools. It all starts there. Huntingford is under-enrolled. So have we had conversations, because I think there's 185 seats available there. Have we had conversations about putting an early learning center in Huntingford, being that building's already built, instead of, or even maybe while we're waiting for the early learning center to get built? Like, can we do something sooner since we have space there? Or would that 185 seats be enough for an early learning center, and maybe we wouldn't have to spend the money to build that, and they could use that for another purpose such as retail or whatever is allowed in the agreement?
Dr. Vasquez.
Yeah. We have not had conversations about adding the early learning center at Hungerford. My understanding is what the conversations have been around modeling it similar to the early learning center that exists at Orange Center, which incorporates medical services and therapies and begins with children who are 6 weeks of age. Currently, we do not have any program similar to that is run by the district, and would require us to not only make significant modifications to the building, but also as far as the staffing, because the requirements for that age group is significantly different than what we have for the 4-year-olds.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just thinking it's under-enrolled. We're looking at under-enrolled schools. If there's a way to utilize those seats so that we could fill that campus, that would be preferable.
Yeah. If that is something that Dr. Phillips Charities would like to have further discussions on, we would have no issues with that.
Okay, thank you. And then most of my questions were what happens to the land, and you answered that already. Then the other question that I have is, if as they move forward with, and I know the good faith probably covers this, but say the museum, I'm just picking that out just as a random thing, but say they go get through and they say, you know what, I don't know that the museum's a good fit. I think that there's another thing that would be a better fit. Does this contract allow Dr. Phillips Charities and the town of Eatonville to make a decision that moving forward, there's something that we could do that would be better for the town of Eatonville than a museum? Are they allowed to work together to come to that conclusion without having to pay us money?
Mr. Palmerini, I think you're prepared to respond to that.
So what I would anticipate is, if Dr. Phillips and the town came to us and said, there's something different that we would want to do, and maybe this would require us, we have a purchase and sale agreement that has certain things, requirements built in, but we think this other project we're jointly agree is better, I think they would come to us saying, can we amend that provision? And I certainly would think this contract is amenable to that in the future if they were able to do that. And I would think the board would be more than willing, if the town and Dr. Phillips jointly came to us to say, we think this would be better, that we would do that.
Okay, I just want to ensure that, because needs change, things change. We've seen a huge shift amongst ourselves just in the last couple of years of change. I just want to make sure that there's flexibility built in for the town of Eatonville and for Dr. Phillips Charities to be able to do the good work they need to do in Eatonville that satisfies the needs of the people of Eatonville. Thank you.
Excellent questions, Member Gallo. Thank you. Member Felder.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning and Happy New Year to everybody. You may have addressed some of the questions, but as you were speaking, John, I was jotting down two things that of concern to me in regards to our agreement with Eatonville and the Dr. Phillips Charities. I do want to preface my statements with the fact that I'm sure that you know this, but I want to reiterate the fact that this is historical. This town is historical, and there is a need for preservation in the climate that you know that we're living in with regard to our government. I'm grateful that someone is able to come to assist with the preservation of our heritage and our history. And as educators, it is so imperative, and I thank you for the comment you made regarding the children. There's a need for not just Eatonville children, for children across this district, this state, this country, to know the history, the historical significance of the town of Eatonville. So now my one question is, I hear this all the time, and maybe you can help me understand it better. This whole idea of affordable housing, what is that?
Mr. Pomeroy, you're recognized.
Thank you. Affordable housing, it's based upon, and forgive me, I should have looked this up, but there are certain percentages of mean household income that if you fall below a threshold for that, then you would be eligible to get affordable housing. And affordable housing obviously is housing that is below the market rate as far as what rent would be charged at a comparable unit that's not in an affordable housing complex.
Now, I've heard the term, but I asked that question because in so many instances, it's been stated that people are living in affordable housing. But as the year, the month, the time goes on, they can no longer afford it. And so that's why I asked the question, because I needed that clarity in terms of the fact that if we have that, these people, there's no chance that it's going to be unaffordable. It just still depends upon the market rate again.
Yeah. That's the anticipation with this affordable housing is for, forgive me, it's a period of years and years and years that it will continue to remain affordable for folks to live in. And affordable means, I've just looked up the statute, monthly rents or monthly mortgage payments, including taxes, insurance, and utilities, that do not exceed 30% of that amount, which represents the percentage of the median adjusted gross annual income for households within the general area.
Yeah, I'm concerned because Eatonville has been living for a long time, and residents have been in that town for a long time, functioning and doing well, and I would hope that we'll be able to secure that for them. The other question is, and you may have explained it, but I just need it again. You talked about the good faith effort. Could you explain what is the good faith effort?
Good faith effort is Dr. Phillips going to the town of Eatonville saying, I have plans to do this community pavilion and green space. I have plans to do the early learning center. I have plans to do all of the things that are listed in the agreement. And we are coming to you for seeking development approval to the extent that where they want to put these certain types, where they want to put those projects, that it requires a comprehensive plan change. Comprehensive plan, of course, is the general blueprint for how growth is accomplished within a municipality or a county. Zoning is the particular, types of uses that are allowed in any certain area. Sometimes you can just have a zoning change without needing a comprehensive plan change, and sometimes you need a comprehensive plan change and a zoning change. If those were required, Dr. Phillips would go to the town saying, hey, we want to initiate comprehensive plan changes or zoning changes that are necessary to allow us to do that kind of development. And if they are actively presenting the development plans, seeking the approvals for the comprehensive plan changes or zoning plan changes that are needed, that to us would be commercially reasonable good faith efforts. If they sat there during that entire 2-year period or 3-year period and didn't do any of that, and did not make the attempt to build what they've committed to build in the agreement, that would not be commercially reasonable good faith efforts in my view. Again, I would be dumbfounded if I found myself coming back to you saying, members of the board, I don't believe Dr. Phillips has made a commercially reasonable good faith effort. I would truly be astounded, but we left ourselves that out to make sure that they have their feet being held to the proverbial fire to do what they've committed to do in this agreement. They've given us no indication of anything other than they're going to do what they're committed to do in this agreement.
Yes, and I believe that also, but my concern is that I'm hoping that the members of the town of Edenville and the powers that be, that they are really working cohesively and making decisions regarding what they would like to do with the property. That is so important, because even though you may not have the financial opportunity or the finances to do what you want to do to make your situation better, but there still should be some comment or some sort of concern for how you feel about what is yours. And I believe that they will have good effort, because as educators, we do want the land to be used for good purpose and to do the right thing for those children that are coming along. When all of us are long gone and we are a memory, Edenville still should be there and should be prosperous and should be doing the things that it needs to do for those children's children that are coming behind. And that is my concern. Again, I agree. I think that the good effort would be there, but I just want to reiterate as a member of this board that is a concern that we have, an empathy that we have with the city, with the town of Edenville, and what Dr. Phillips is doing, which is, in my opinion, I appreciate the help, because it's something great needs to be done with that property and with that land. Thank you so much for the breakdown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Member Felder. Thank you for those important questions. Member Vanos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kind of going off of what Member Felder said, it sounds like this agreement was really sort of structured to encourage collaboration between both Dr. Phillips and the town of Eatonville, because Dr. Phillips' ability to develop the property is really dependent upon the town council's decisions regarding zoning, comp plan, all of that. And there is, would be in the town's best interest to work with Dr. Phillips, because if they don't, and Dr. Phillips uses, reasonable, commercially, good faith efforts, the land reverts back to Dr. Phillips. So it seems like this agreement was sort of structured in a way that encourages collaboration among all parties.
Marini, you recognize?
That's correct, Member Vanos. Obviously, it just like any development in any municipality or any county, if you have to approve to the local entity in order to get your development approved. You have to submit your plans. You have to make sure you're going in a correctly zoned area. So that obviously fosters cooperation between the landowner and the town in order to get that development across the line and finished. And Dr. Phillips, to their credit, has said They are looking to engage with the town. They are looking to talk to the folks in the town and really lay out their vision beyond what is listed within this agreement. And they're obviously going to have to work with the town with respect to any commercial development beyond these things that are listed in the agreement that's going to go in there.
And then the other part that I don't think has been brought up yet is the advisory board. And so that would be another way in which the town of Eatonville, both through the, town representatives, town council representatives, would ensure that Dr. Phillips remains accountable under this agreement. Could you give a little explanation about that advisory council?
The advisory council, I believe, is something that Dr. Phillips has set up with respect to that. I think they would be better positioned than I would be to explain the contours of that. I'm sorry to do this to you, Dr. Phillips. I apologize, but I think they would be better able to do that than I would.
I just think that's an important piece to understand a little bit better as we go through this conversation.
Please.
Thank you.
Let me, bear with me just a minute. I'll see if I can
We love
get
this
the
part.
podium adjusted up. For the benefit of the public who might be viewing, who might not know either one of you, if you could identify yourselves.
Okay, I am Terry Prather. I have the honor of being the chairman of the board for Dr. Phillips Charities.
And I'm Ken Robinson. I'm the president and CEO of Dr. Phillips.
Yeah. So the question about the advisory committee, we've already started work on defining the criteria for advisory committee. We've selected a person, Dr. Bahia Maroon, that has done lots of work in community work for decades and is very familiar with this type of work, going into communities and collaborating with residents and leaders of the community. The advisory committee's role is to be that conduit between the Dr. Phillips Charities Board and the community of Eatonville. So we need that group. There will be representatives from the town. There will be some subject matter experts also on the committee. And as soon as we are completed with the land transaction, we will then begin to recruit members of that committee. So we've started the framework, and we have a very solid framework that will protect not only the town, but more importantly, hold Dr. Phillips Charities accountable.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. While I have you up here.
I saw this coming.
And I think we talked a little bit about this at the September 30th meeting, but a lot of questions have come up within the town. Will Dr. Phillips Charities be profiting off of this development?
No, Dr. Phillips will not. That kind of distinguishes us from a private developer. We're community builders. We're a nonprofit that makes grants to other organizations. So we're taking this opportunity to make a difference in Eatonville, and we've agreed internally with our board of directors there'll be no profit motive at all.
Okay.
And one of the benefits of the committee, the advisory committee, that there will be open books. So they'll be able to see every dollar that's spent, every dollar that's brought in. So the committee will be responsible for communicating between the charity and the town of how the money is spent and where it goes. There'll be full transparency on every transaction.
I love that. Okay. I didn't realize that piece of it. I think that will be really, really important for everybody to see. So thank you so much
So
for
the
that.
advisory committee, and I'll say this out in public for those that, as we go out and ask people to join the committee, it will be a working committee. It won't be show up one meeting a month for an hour and go home. So we expect people to be working, meaning that they will be interrogating us, asking us questions at the board level to make sure that we're always held accountable to hold to what we say we're going to do. And as we think about this and we talk about this, and we'll share this a lot with the committee, this is at a minimum a decade-long project, a decade. You know, this type of work doesn't happen overnight. So there's going to be years of just pre-development work, and many people have talked about the master plan over the past few months. But the master plan was just a visioning process. Now we get into development plans. That's when we will work with the town council and make sure that everything that we want to do fits into the master planning of the town and all their land development rules.
Okay. And actually that leads to another question I was going to ask is just being at the meetings this past week, I understand that there's a comprehensive plan that is pending approval in Orange County from the town of Eatonville right now.
There was one that was the Falcone, the previous buyers were looking at doing, and that was tabled. I don't know where that sits with the city. The city has to approve it. I believe the county is ready to, or the state, but the city has to move forward with that.
Okay.
We really haven't studied it.
Okay, so I was going to ask if your development plans are consistent with that, but it looks like we haven't gotten there yet.
No, we'd be so early in the process, it wouldn't be fair to
Okay.
say.
I only spent a year in real estate development, so I don't remember much.
Yes.
Okay. Let me also just ask, I know a very big concern is the affordable housing piece of this agreement. How did you come, and I will say, because I was at 2 or 3 of the master planning workshops that happened over the last 2 years, and I don't remember affordable housing being a big piece of the town's, I guess, desire for development. So I'm wondering how or why you've decided to include that, and whether you believe the town needs additional affordable housing.
I think what's in the agreement is we dedicate land for affordable housing. And what the town has to do, the town or some entity has to develop a housing strategy. And within that strategy, there'll be things for single-family housing, multifamily housing. But more importantly, one of the greatest challenges of the town of Eatonville right now is less than 25% of the homes are owner-occupied. And most healthy communities average 70 to 75% owner-occupied. So at 25% owner-occupied, one of the things that we, Dr. Phillips Charities, and the town of Eatonville and some other entity has to develop is a strategy that addresses the ownership issue, and then we can get into affordability. And Ms. Felder asked a question about affordability, and that is a great question because it's all relative to the location. And as John mentioned, if you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing, that's not affordable for you. So we have to make sure that there's a strategy that really focuses on the town of Eatonville and its residents to create ownership opportunities, but more importantly, stabilizing housing and the housing stock. So it's going to require, again, this is not something that happens overnight. This is decade-long work that has to start now. And like they always say, when you plant a shade tree, should have planted it 20 years ago, but now we're going to plant it today.
Right. Well, and that's a great point. And so what I understand you saying is that the agreement contemplates affordable housing, but it does not mandate it. That really it's part of a overall strategy that you'll be developing with, is it with the town or the advisory council that you'll sort of be developing that strategy?
It's got to be with all of us. It has to be and I think someone used the word collaboration. It has to be a collaborative effort.
Okay.
Dr. Phillips Charities, we bring certain skills to the table, but it's important that we work with the town council and any other entity that will be involved in developing and managing this strategy.
Okay. And the reason that I am continuing to talk about this is because I did go on a tour yesterday and I saw the different, apartment complexes and affordable housing that is already in the town. And my understanding is that it is, that those developments are not at capacity. So I think that's the reason for one of my concerns. And I think the other concern that was raised is that the town they want to ensure that the people that are, coming back to the town, deciding to build a life there, that they are, people who can afford market rate housing. And so there's a conversation of like, how does that happen? Like, how do you create that? And it sounds like maybe that's part of your housing strategy.
Well, it's not our housing strategy. It's a strategy that has to be developed for the entire town. This is just one parcel of land in the town. So it's going to require a number of people working together to develop this plan. Because at the end of the day, one of the things that we've said in every meeting we've had internally is that whatever we do, we will prevent displacement of current residents. If anything, we want to invite residents that used to live there. And there are a number of young professionals that have left the town because of lack of availability of affordable, high-quality housing.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great. And also, honestly, what I'm hearing, I think part of that, the desire to attract those, some of that, the demographic kind of back into the town is also connected to the desire to have more, commercial property, retail. And I hear a lot about restaurants and even breweries or places for entertainment. And one of the places that we drove through yesterday, I think it was called Independence Lane in Maitland, and just sort of like that green space area, and then has that street with just a cute little street with Kelly's homemade ice cream and different shops along there. Is that the sort of thing that you're contemplating for the green space area, or is that sort of is that something that you're thinking about incorporating in here?
So one, we're trying to create a foundation, build a foundation that all of this can follow. And the green space area, we do contemplate that it'll be lined on one side kind of with retail and housing, and the other side with office and other portions that generate tax revenues for the town of Eatonville, because that's very important for their longevity. And so we think that creating that space is the first and most important thing we do. That's what we've done within the packing district, create space, then the demand for the retail follows.
Yeah, we've got to get this critical mass in place. Without that, you don't have this tax base that the town wants and needs. We want to help deliver that.
Okay. And so that's kind of, and then I'll let other people ask questions, but I will need to come back. But it's that tax base is that other really important piece that I heard loud and clear, that, a lot of the buildings and groups that are currently in Eatonville aren't paying taxes. And so the town is just strangled. It's not getting the tax revenue it needs. And so it's really important to the town to be able to have that tax base and to develop it. And so I think that was one of the concerns that came out of the draft agreement, was not seeing in there the commercial, the retail, and just sort of seeing a lot of like nonprofit work, which is great, but it's, not kind of developing that tax base.
I think that's kind of what your council alluded to. This is not an exclusive agreement. There's other items that can take place in it, and it's the full intention to do it. We're doing economic studies of what time those can come along and what they should start to look like.
Okay,
The
great.
worst thing we could do is go build something now that won't sustain itself. That's the worst thing we could do. So we have to, again, that's why this advisory committee is such a key conduit between the charity and the town and its residents of the town, to make sure that what we do is timed properly. Sequence matters. And so when we talk about foundational elements, these first few elements are strictly foundational. When someone talked about education, when less than 30% of kids going into Hungerford kindergarten, less than 30% are kindergarten ready, that tells us we have a challenge and an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And actually, okay, sorry, but I just think that just led me to one other question, which was at the Early Learning Center, that the current preschool at the current VPK, I guess, at Hungerford, that starts at age 4. Is that right? Okay. So the early learning would really be the 6 weeks until 4, and then they would move to Hungerford Elementary for the VPK program and
Correct.
kindergarten.
And there are currently some operating early learning centers in the town. And we met with several of them, because one of the things we don't want to do is bring in an early learning center and put them out of business.
Right.
So it has to be a collaborative effort to do an early learning task force so that every center is successful, not only financially, but academically.
And it sounds like what you found is that the students who are going to Hungerford Elementary right now are not prepared as kindergartners or in the pre-K program. So it sounds like there is a need for earlier intervention, both with like medical therapies and different, occupational speech therapy, and some additional learning. There is a need right now, even with the current daycare situation that exists.
Correct. Yes. And I didn't make it. I got this from the principal at Hungerford.
Okay. I do have more questions, but I'm going to take a break for now and let my board members speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Vanos. Member Ferrant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think you guys can sit down if you want. I don't know if I may have questions, I
Don't
guess.
need to go very far, though.
This is an awesome discussion, and first and foremost, I'm excited that we're at this point, looking at this property and the potential that it has to really bring life and growth back into the town of Eatonville is exciting. And I think it's exciting to see Dr. Phillips Charities coming alongside in a way that us as a school board, we can't provide these services. And so it is exciting to see gentlemen like yourself who see the need and say, how can we partner? And I'm very excited. So a couple questions that I have on slide, I think it would have been slide 2. Where it talks about the town center and the history museum. It says that the land will be donated to the town of Eatonville once construction funding is secured. So my question is, will Dr. Phillips oversee the construction? Are they donating the land to Eatonville before or after construction is complete?
Mr. Palmerini, can you speak to that?
Yeah, you said the town center, the museum, right?
Yeah, it was under the portion that talks about the town center and the history museum, and it says the land will be donated to the town of Eatonville once construction funding is secured for the town center and history museum. Will they be partaking in the construction or?
So, and Mr. Robinson's just stepped right back up to the mic, so.
Of it, but we are not participating in the construction of it. So the town will be responsible for their own construction. Now, when it comes to that portion of it that's a history center, we'll certainly work with the town to look for some funding for them outside of Dr. Phillips or within Dr. Phillips.
Okay, wonderful. So you guys would help with the funding aspect of this?
We are not committing to that. What we're saying is we will assist with that portion of it. We will donate the land to it, and then we will start to assist in making that happen.
Helping them to connect with people that
Correct.
could help. Wonderful. Okay, that answers my question on that. I appreciate that. And my other question was, so Mr. Palmerini, for you on paragraph 6, on that slide, it was talking about just the sale and agreement and whatnot. What stops Dr. Phillips from selling off parts of the land? Or are they allowed to when they have the land? How does that work?
So they would be, what stops them is only to the extent that they have committed to do certain things and build certain things and donate land for certain things. Otherwise, once we sell this land to them, they are the landowner. So they get to make the decisions about, am I keeping my land? Is it better for me to sell it? I'm sure they're going to be working with their advisory committee, and they may sell certain portions of it to, commercial entities that may develop, commercial businesses on that. That's something that they would get to do as a landowner, like any other landowner, with respect to their property.
But within the agreement, let's say they don't do any of the things that they are saying that they'll do.
So I'll give you 2 examples. One, they make no good faith efforts whatsoever, and they don't do any of the things they say they're going to do. They would owe us $13 million, but then they're still the owners of the property, right? And so as owners of the property, they can determine, I'm going to go ahead and sell it. I'm going to do other things. I'm going to apply to the town. I don't anticipate them doing that, but they would have the same rights as any other property owner. Say they make good faith efforts and they can construct none of it, they would pay us $6.5 million, but they would still be the owners of the land, and they would still get to determine, I'm either going to keep the land, I'm going to sell portions of the land, I'm going to sell all of the land. They would become once we complete this purchase and sale and close, other than the contractual commitments they've made to us to build certain things or facilitate the construction of certain things, we would have the ability to either get the money for that or hold their feet to the fire, but otherwise they would be the landowners.
Okay. So it really is all three are just trusting that everybody is doing the best thing for the town of Eatonville, I think is what, and for us, when I look at this, I look at the history of Dr. Phillips, what the charity has done, what they have done within Orange County, how they have benefited the people, how they have poured into different areas and really held to their word before. So I don't like, Mr. Palmerini is saying, I don't anticipate us seeing this go down a different road. Although I know that it is hard, I think, for some to trust. And so as we look at this situation, the contract that I'm reading really does, it puts us in a position with the advisory board that Dr. Phillips is creating, which to me that shows integrity and that you're wanting to put that hand out to say, hey, we want to work collaboratively. And so anyways, I think that helps a lot in that regard. The Early Learning Center, I think, is going to be a really huge plus. Everything that you both have shared really solidifies a lot of the questions that I already had, and that you're looking at all areas, all aspects, not just coming in and saying, boom, we're going to build this, we're going to do that. And it ends up, what looks like is going to be great could end up, maybe destroying something. But what I see and what I'm hearing from the two of you is that you're really looking at everything. How can we collaborate with the early learning centers that are already there? And how can we be a partner with them? How can we be good partners? That's what I think the town needs, and what I hear from town members, that's what they're desiring. So excited to hear that. And then the last couple questions have already been answered, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Front. And that's, I'm queued up next, and that's probably a perfect opportunity to speak to the issue of trust and how much of this is built on trust. And I want to say that not as much as you might think, because the way this contract is designed, although some of it is not explicitly stated, is the town is not being asked to be in a position of trusting, because they have control more than you recognize, okay? So the things that Dr. Phillips has stepped in and said, we want to do this. Some of them, for instance, the museum is something that we've heard over and over again, not just from the town council, but from members of the community. And I think everybody understands that museum is about ensuring that people always remember how Eatonville came to be, how that property came to be donated by a white farmer who saw way back when the just horrific discrimination that our black youth did not have opportunities for education. So that museum it's not just for Eatonville, it's for our whole country to never forget what those dark days look like, lest we ever return to them, which is something you all have heard me talk about. It scares me a little bit sometimes, the direction we're going when we don't protect public education. That's the place where all of our kids come together. All of them learn equally with the same opportunities. So that museum is so fundamental. The opportunity for our families to have access to health care for their children. I heard comments about speech therapy, et cetera. I want to comment about that for just a minute, lest anybody think that any of us up here think that because our children are black, they need speech therapy more than others. I have 4 kids. 2 of my kids desperately needed speech therapy, okay? And they got it through public education. One because of ear infections and wasn't able to hear enough to learn. The other had it tongue-tied. This is a common thing, but it is that access to early intervention for medical conditions that are often undiagnosed is so extremely important. So the things that are required of Dr. Phillips to do are the things that are absolutely essential, not just for the children that live and grow up in Eatonville, but for our broader community. The other things that we talk about here, and one of my great concerns, and Mr. Prather and I have had lots of conversations about this. You all know I've spent a lot more time in the area of building and developing communities than I've ever spent understanding how to educate students, as important as that is. But you do have to have this balance. You have to have, it's not enough to say we're going to have a museum that preserves our history. We have to have and Eatonville that is thriving well into the future. Okay? Doesn't do us any good if this city cannot continue to thrive. And that's where the financial component comes in. And the financial component, yes, it requires retail and commercial. You cannot have a whole town that's made up of affordable housing or even medium income housing because it doesn't support itself. There has to be that balance. And the town council gets to control the zoning, okay? So if they get to the point where like, you know what, we've got all the housing we need commercial establishments to pick up the tab, if you will. The property taxes that they pay cover the shortage from residential. They're in control. Okay, so that's that collaboration is actually kind of forced on both parties. We have a contract here that forces the Dr. Phillips Charity. Again, I agree with you. I don't think they need to be forced. But when you sit in our seats, you have a responsibility to do more than leap of faith or absolute trust. Although both of them, I think, are justified, we have an obligation to ensure that those things happen. And we have that in this, not just because we have an advisory board. The transparency is absolutely crucial. And I felt so much better when I understood the commitment to account for the funding, what goes in, what goes out. So the concerns that you raised are great questions to be raised, but they're actually addressed through a process that says, you know what, you can look under the cover. You're going to see what's happening. Dr. Phillips Charities will not be Dr. Phillips Charities if they don't do what they say they will do. Their reputation is what sustains them, is what they are. And by being so transparent, and I like the word interrogate. I loved that you used the word interrogate. It's a very strong word, but it speaks to we are opening ourselves up to interrogation. And that confidence and that integrity, again, are extremely important, but backing that up with a contract that requires you to do certain things in order to be forgiven, but also says you can't, you're not in an opportunity to take advantage with the rest of the property because you have a council that can say, again, this is what we need financially, and this is how we're going to zone this property so that we make sure we are sustaining ourselves. And you actually have a party that I am 100% confident. Again, my confidence isn't enough, but confident that they understand how important that is. Again, it's not just about the past. The future is extremely important. You can't really preserve the past if you can't protect the future. And that's how this all comes together. It's just so much more than the words that you see written. It's about understanding the real dynamics of how things will actually work. So I have some questions, but I think most of them have been answered. I want to hear from the rest of the board members with their questions, and I definitely want to hear from the town council. But I just did want to impart my 2 cents in kind of looking a little deeper about the reality of how things work. So with that, let me turn to Member Salamanca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everyone for being here with us today as we go into the depths of this legal agreement. And I think what makes a great legal agreement is there's accountability on both sides. There's clear expectation setting on what everyone has to do, as well as incentives to collaborate. And so one of the questions I had was around some of the comments that were made, right? We know that the master plan was a vision with some core components based on kind of community feedback and all that goes into that. But this could be a decade-long project with a lot of learnings along the way, a lot of feedback along the way. And so one of the questions I had was actually to amendments to the agreement. And so amendments to the agreement, in this case, Mr. Palmerini, would be anything outside of the things explicitly stated, right? So we're talking anything that's not the museum, that's not the health hub, it's not the early learning. So let's say that the town of Eatonville and Dr. Phillips decide that they're going to do something else, not completely different, but there might be one or two additions that they decide in the next 5-7 years is a better fit, that would come as an amendment to this agreement, correct?
Yeah, so if you look at paragraphs 24 and 25 of
Yeah, I'm looking at
the
25.
agreement, yeah, it absolutely will come to this. So they would approach us. I would anticipate it working this way. Dr. Phillips would approach us saying, talking with the town, we may need to do something slightly different. We need to amend the contract. So then they would propose an amendment that would come back to this board for approval, whoever's sitting in these seats at that
Got
point.
it. So that was
in
my
time.
next question.
Yes.
So any amendment to the agreement would come back before this board,
Yes.
whoever the future board is.
Yes.
Because I think one of the main things would be any amendment to the agreement. I didn't see this language, but I think it would be the intention of this board that we wouldn't go too far off of what the initial intent of what we want. The reason why we did this agreement is we trust the parties involved to see a vision through that includes the community, that includes a lot of the ongoing conversations we've had. Is there anything we need to put in here that says this board wouldn't want 10 years from now to go too off of that initial intention of where we stand today? Or is it just kind of fair game in 7 years that if the amendment is?
And it's all, see, I get very, queasy's the wrong word, but queasy is the right word, of binding a board 7-8 years from now.
Yeah.
And from making a decision that they think is in the best interest of the school district and the school board. So I want to make sure I clarify one thing. Paragraph 24 gives the superintendent the right to sign an amendment, provided that the amendment does not substantially alter or modify the terms herein. So basically, if it was to correct some sort of error within the document, the superintendent would have that authority. But if it's coming back saying, instead of doing an early learning center, we're doing something other
Sports
than that.
center.
Yeah. That would most certainly come back to you all for approval as
So
an amendment.
what's the definition here on substantial?
Of course, it's always in the eyes of the beholder.
Correct.
But I would advise in that case that if it's anything like the core terms, to me, are really what you all are going to need to be concerned with. If it touches any of the things that are delineated in the contract, as far as the healthcare hub and the community hub and the healthcare facility, if it touches any of those specific things, that would be a substantial alteration. If it is correcting the property description because we had something incorrect in the property description and we needed to make sure we were properly reflecting what the intent was, I would say that would go to the superintendent.
That makes sense. I guess to the extent that it might be a completely different board that is here today and a different superintendent that might be here 10, 15 years from now, do we need to, I'm not giving the time, do we need to be more explicit on the definition of what is a substantial change versus not, for it to come to the board versus a superintendent?
I don't think so. I think...
And a
Just-
different general counsel and
Yeah,
definition of substantial might be different.
I think I would like to leave the flexibility as much to, boards as in the future to meet the needs of their community, because there could be things that we can't foresee 7-8 years from now that this board might think, the people sitting on it might think is essential for that to do. I don't think that you need to tighten it down any more than substantially alter or modify. I think anybody sitting in my chair in the future would look at it and say, there are certain things that go to the heart of the agreement that would be a substantial alteration that needs to come back to the board. And remember, my position reports to the 8 of you all.
Yep.
So my position is in charge of making sure that your prerogative is guarded vis-a-vis the superintendent in that case, because you all in this agreement say any substantial alterations are going to come back to us. And I would tell you the way I would do this, and the way I would advise the superintendent, is if there's a question about whether or not it's a substantial alteration, to bring it back to this board just to make sure we're crystal clear that we got the board's guidance.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is not because of this board, the superintendent, this general counsel, but when we got onto this board, or I'll speak for myself, when I got into this board and I learned about the history of the property and the many times that we as a district sold off parts off I don't have a lot of visibility into what was approved via superintendent versus via board versus, and that seems a little bit something that came back to bite us because who was making those decisions, and there were some questionable decisions on how some of this property was sold or used. And I don't want to make any assumptions in this agreement of who will be in your seat determining what is a substantial amendment to an agreement like this. We know what the intention of this agreement is today. We know why we chose this partner today. I think, but when I hear, this master plan is obviously a 10, 15-year project, then I'm not sure if I want as much flexibility that could open up on what is substantial or away from the intent of the initial agreement. So I don't know what that entails from a legal perspective. I did not go to law school, but I'm just voicing a concern that today this looks like a great agreement for the kind of flexibility we need with the right partners, the right board, the right superintendent. But given the history with this property, I don't want to leave too much flexibility for 15 years from now, this looking like an entirely different agreement than what we are signing off in the near future.
Obviously, I can't make commitments beyond me at
Correct.
this point, and I can't say how anybody else sitting in my chair would interpret it. I can only tell you how I will interpret it, and given the conversation that's occurring up here, that if I have any question about whether or not it's substantial alteration, it's coming to you all for approval.
Okay. Yeah. So to the extent maybe if there's anything that you come up with that would protect the initial intent of what we all say here around.
I'll see Sergio and I and Chris Wilson will see if there's anything we can do to put some wording in there and we'll talk with obviously Dr. Phillips and their lawyers in case we come up with anything. I'm not guaranteeing we'll come up with anything better than that, but we'll see what we can come up with.
Yeah, and again, as I mentioned, my initial reason for that question is a lot more on the history of the property and decisions that were made, and it's not clear to me how many of those decisions were made with awareness or not to the board, to the superintendent, like that. I'm trying to avoid some of that in the future. Other than that, I think I am pleasantly surprised that the agreement really has accountability on both sides, incentives on both sides for there to be real collaboration, some real thoughts, because this is a really tough conversation with a lot of folks that have a point of view. And also delighted to hear that it's going to be open books, that there's going to be a working committee, that there's going to be an advisory committee. All of that, I think, is important for folks to know, to trust this process, because it is built on trust, and it's going to be a very long process. And so to the degree that we can have transparency and collaboration, I think that's going to go a long way. So thank you so much for that. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Member Salamanca. And regarding your previous concerns, I think it's also important to know that regardless of who the superintendent is and who sits on this board, the superintendent does report to the board. So I think the board now or in the future always has the opportunity to say, when it comes to the term substantial, the board needs to be aware of when the superintendent is contemplating making those changes. And so if we had a different structure, for instance, if we had an independently elected superintendent, the board would not have that same level of authority to have those conversations with the superintendent in a meaningful way. So again, there's so many things that don't have to be written into a contract because they're part of a process. And I do, before I go to Member Douglas, before I get too far away from my previous comments, the checks and balances when it comes to this contract in terms of if Dr. Phillips is precluded from doing the things that are in the contract, there are protections to them and not incentives, but protections against being just completely stonewalled. So again, as I read through this and read through it, I was impressed at the amount of diligence that went into making sure that there were checks and balances to ensure that the right things happen and that the council still has a lot of authority over a lot of land, to make sure that they're doing their due diligence and they're upholding their responsibility. We haven't taken that away from them to determine the outcome of a lot of this development. So I think it's a good, fair mix, and I think it's the best that I've seen in all the years that I've watched this process from a distance, from the county commission and as a private citizen even before that. So with that, Member Douglas, you're recognized.
Yes, good morning, and I think it's still good morning, and Happy New Year to everyone. I just want to say that, thank you so much for having students and parents and teachers in mind when you're talking about affordable housing. We do need it right now, and thank you so much for that. The other thing, I just also wanted to applaud the fact that you are willing to be transparent in finances and in all the money that you're going to spend, that the city will be able to have a part of it, that collaboration with the city. I absolutely love that. The second thing that I wanted to say is that I feel a little bit, I don't know. Okay, just have some question. The $13 million that Dr. Phillips is willing to pay, you said that they will pay $1 million, and if they do some work, then we will forgive those $13 million. But if they do not do what they say they will do, they will pay $13 million, but then they will keep the land, right?
So it's a little bit broken down further, just to make sure. I want to make sure I'm clear.
Okay.
The purchase price for the property is $14 million.
Okay.
They're going to pay us $1 million of that at closing.
Okay.
The other $13 million of that can be forgiven if they build all the things that they commit to build within the agreement. So all of those things get built as contemplated in the agreement. $13 million of the purchase price gets forgiven. If they make no good faith efforts and they make no commercially reasonable efforts whatsoever, they just sit on the property for 10 years, they're going to have to owe the board $13 million. I don't anticipate that occurring, but if they do absolutely nothing, they pay us the other $13 million.
How long, so after 10 years?
Yeah, it's
How
after,
long is that going to be?
It's after 10 years after the closing of the contract, right? And we give them certain time frames. I think the community green space is 2 years. I think the early learning center is 3 years. I think the community hub is 4 years. Forgive me, those numbers are all scrambling in my head, right? But we give them certain portions to get those things done, but we're giving them 10 years in this agreement to try to get everything over the line. Because, as they said, going through the planning process with the town, if there's comprehensive plan changes needed for certain things, it's going to take some time, right? Say they go through that 10-year period, they've tried to do everything they can with the town, and they've asked for the zoning changes, they've asked for the comprehensive plan changes, but none of the things that they've committed to do get built. None of it. They've made good faith efforts, but none of it gets built. They wouldn't owe us $13 million, they'd owe us 6.5 or half of that, right? If they build certain things, like say they build the community pavilion in the green space, $5 million of the purchase price would be forgiven. If they don't build the early learning center, but they've made good faith efforts to try to build it, they just don't get it done. Instead of them paying us $5 million, which is what the forgiveness on that is, they would pay us $2.5 million.
Okay.
So it could be anywhere from 6.5 to 13 million, or it could be a little bit less than that, based on what gets built within the time frames or not.
Okay. Just a scenario. If they decide after 5 years that they don't want to do any of that, they want to keep the land and give us 13 million, and they do whatever they want with the land. So now the land belongs to whom?
The land is going to belong to Dr. Phillips.
Okay.
Right? So I think what the chair was speaking to is, let's say Dr. Phillips did that and did absolutely nothing, and they said, you know what, here's the check for $13 million, right? Well, great for the school district, then we get paid for the property. But Dr. Phillips is then the landowner, and they're still going to have to deal with the town of Eatonville, and they're still going to have to get their development either approved or not, right? So they could decide, we're going to pay you the $13 million and we're just going to keep the property. We're not going to do any of it. But then they've got a $14 million piece of property that they may not be able to do anything with because they're not getting any approval from the town. I don't think they're incentivized to do that because that's an awful lot of money to pay for a piece of property that you can't do anything with, right? So I think the agreement, I understand what you're saying. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, they could do anything they want with that land. No?
No.
They could build something, another business on that land. Can they?
They can,
It's their land.
it's their land,
Right.
but they have to commit to building the things that they committed to do contractually with us. And
Okay.
if they don't commit to doing
Okay.
that, then they give us the full purchase price.
Right.
They're incentivized to build the things that we've asked for in this agreement in order to get the forgiveness of the purchase price. If they don't,
Mr. Palmer,
Yes, ma'am.
can I try to clarify one thing? So,
Yeah.
Member Douglas, because the land is in the town,
Eatonville. Mhm.
Eatonville has zoning control.
Okay.
So if Dr. Phillips Charities was to say, you know what, we've got all this land, we're going to do whatever we want, we're going to make a fortune, the town council can change the zoning to prevent them from doing whatever it is.
they do have
So they
some-
have, they can,
they do
yeah,
have authority to
at
do
that
something
point,
about
they
this.
get to play hardball.
Okay.
If they need to play hardball to keep Dr. Phillips Charity from doing something like that. This board is not going to do something like that. But
Well-
in the hypothetical that you had a different group of people that wanted to try that, which is a reasonable reason for you all to be asking this
Okay,
question.
yes.
It's a fair question, and it's good that you're asking it. But just because they own the land doesn't mean that they can go out and build whatever they want, okay? Because it's in a
It's in
municipality.
Eatonville. Okay.
Even if we were in unincorporated Orange County Commission could say, yeah, you're not going to build that commercial that's going to make you this. You're not going to build that. We're going to zone this, whatever, agricultural, and now you're stuck with this. Or you can only do institutional. So there are checks and balances.
Okay,
They're
wonderful.
just not clear
I
in the
just wanted to
contract.
make sure
Yeah.
that we do have some strong check and balances
Yes.
in place for the town of Eatonville, because this town, I'm not from Eatonville, but it represents a lot to me. It's historical, it's authentic, and I just would like to stay the way it is and make it, and bring the values of these cities, because it's a plus for us in Orlando to have a city like that in Orlando. Okay, and we really would like to keep that authenticity and the cultural aspect of the city in this, in Orlando. And I just, I just always learn that there's nothing for nothing. Okay, this look like a very philanthropic. Why are you doing that? Yes.
I think so. What your comment was, this looks very philanthropic, but that's who we are and that's what we do.
Okay.
For the history of Dr. Phillips Charities, we've invested over $250 million in this community, and our guidelines tell us that we will invest all the money that we get into Orange and Osceola County
Okay.
to support communities, to make communities stronger. And that's why we exist. The organization's been around for over 100 years, and we have no intention on changing what we're about.
You're convincing me a little bit more. Thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure that we, we preserving our city of Eatonville. That I just wanted to make sure that there are strong check and balances and still have a say and a voice in whatever, plans that you do have, and you work in collaboration, just like you said you will. And I appreciate all that. If that theoretically look like it's a great thing that will happen, I wish it will come realistically. It will make it happen. You will make it happen. It's not going to be in theory, but it's going to be also, real. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you will do in the city of Edenville. But that preservation, that's what I'm fighting for, And I do thank you for, having zeroing on the city of Edenville. Okay, so, and I pray that my brothers and sisters of Edenville will be able to have a say in everything, in your plans. That's all that I want, and I desire. Thank you so much for everything. I do appreciate it. And again, Happy New Year. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Douglas. Member Vanos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first question, John, what is the fair market value of this property?
I mean, we took the 14 million because that was the purchase price that we were coming out of the RFP in 2021. That's why we chose that. We put that out to market. We had bidders. That's what we got 4 years ago. I don't know that we've had it appraised per se. I'd have to go back and look at that, but a lot of it would depend on what the best possible use of it is, current zoning, that kind of stuff. So that's awful hard to say, but we felt comfortable with the 14 million based upon what we had 3 bidders bring us in 2021, and that's the number we got. So that's how we came there.
Thank you. When Dr. Phillips is going through its inspection period, I presume it will get an appraisal of the property, or was that waived?
Let me go back and look at that just to make sure that's one of the provisions I didn't delve into deeply, but I'll check that and I'll get back with you.
Okay, thank you. I also wanted to ask, okay, so this was something that came up at the meeting as well yesterday. Does the trust that initially held part of the land, does it continue to hold any of the land?
No, so that was part of the litigation. In 2010, the town initiated litigation against us and the trust with respect to the property. We always owned the property after 1951, but we had the restriction on the use of the property that said we had to use it for the education of African American children. So in 2010, the town sued us and the trust in a declaratory action seeking to have that restriction removed from the property. We reached a settlement agreement in 2015, in order to remove the restriction from the property. A payment of $1 million was made to the trust, and the court approved the stipulation withdrawing that restriction on the use of the property. So we own the property, and as of 2015, there is no longer a restriction on how the property needed to be used. And that was part of we were initially selling the property in 2010 to the town of Edenville. We entered into a purchase and sale contract in order to do that. And one of the things that Edenville wanted to do was, of course, develop it to have a tax base and to get commercial development in there, and they could not do that with the use restriction on the property. So it was everybody's benefit to get that use restriction pulled off. So we own the property outright. There is no use restriction on it that would prohibit development on it going forward.
Okay, thank you. I saw the provision for the green space area that once that is built out, that property will be conveyed back to the town of Eatonville. So that means that the town will be able to collect the proceeds from any venue rentals or anything like that, right?
That's my understanding of it, yes.
Okay. So actually let me stay on that a little bit. So for the other pieces of property, so let's just say the health center, health hub. Dr. Phillips continues to own that property after it's developed. My guess is that because they are not in the business of providing health care, they would be contracting with an entity, probably a tenant, to operate the health, for just lack of a better word, the healthcare business on that property. So who would receive the proceeds from that lease?
Dr. Phillips, as the property owner.
Okay. So they would be receiving the proceeds from the lease on the health, and would that be the same for the early learning center?
Yeah, if they were to convey it to if they were.
Do they own it?
Yeah, they would own it, and they would lease it out to a third party operator. Yes, they would receive the lease proceeds.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I also wanted to ask about the deed restriction. So I noticed in the affordable housing piece, there was something that said that the single family homes were, or there was deed restricted, and there was some question about what does that mean?
Deed restricted, as I understand it, is restricted as far as it being affordable housing. That's how I understand and read it.
So could it also mean, let's say if someone, let's say if it's a affordable or attainable home and someone purchase it under that categorization, that it might prevent them from selling it, within, they couldn't turn around and sell it the next year for a higher price. Would that also fall into a deed restriction?
That could, yeah, that would probably be within part of the deed restrictions they would do. So it depends on if Dr. Phillips is the developer or if they get another development entity to do that. So what they would do is if they're developing the property and they're putting it out for rental or for sale, they would create deed restrictions that would run with the land, covenants that run with the land that say, hey, this property has certain following deed restrictions. It's similar to like what HOAs do and condo associations do. When they create those communities, they'll create a declaration of covenants and restrictions for the homeowners association or the condo association that says you're deed restricted from doing certain things with the land. That's the old rules of, you got to pay assessments. You can't, paint your house unless it's approved. I'm not saying that that's what they're going to do with it, but those are the types of restrictions that could be put on the property.
Okay. Thank you. I also have a question about, in paragraph 6, it talks about the community green space, early learning center, kind of these different parts of the property. And with respect to the early learning center, you said that when they included the language to the extent permitted by law, that was so that if the law didn't permit it, that it could, you mentioned something about a severability clause, but I thought that there already was a severability clause in this agreement. There
is. So what that language does is it ensures, sometimes, and you'll remember this from seeing these types of, is that provision so essential to the contract that it can't be severed out, and it would basically defeat the entire intent and purpose of the contract. To the extent permitted by law was put in there to ensure that any court reviewing this agreement, should we ever get there, would see that it is not essential to the contract, and we are caveating it in a way to show that that is something that can in fact be severed out.
So is that like the suspenders argument?
Belt and suspenders argument, that's a different portion of it. But yeah, but it is meant to hedge in case that any reviewing court has a question, we can point to it and say, we don't think that there's any question about this, but to the extent that there is a question about whether or not we intended it to be severable out of the contract, we put in the phrase to the extent permitted by law to ensure that the court would know that we think that this could come out in case a court ruled it unconstitutional or otherwise in violation of a statute, and have the rest of the agreement survive.
Okay. And it's specifically, though, for that paragraph versus for the whole agreement.
That's correct.
Okay. Got it. That makes sense. Then one other question just about the structure was, so when you talk about the community hub and the healthcare facility, there's the whole piece in there that talks about the approval and whether the approval is given or not, but that same language is not repeated for the early learning center or the green space.
Of course, our good friends and Dr. Phillips and us, this was a product of negotiations, and sometimes they wanted that protection within the community hub healthcare facility portion of the agreement. We thought that it would be, can you all hear me? I'm just making sure. I'm sorry. It sounds like it goes in and out, and I apologize for that. So this was the product of negotiations with Dr. Phillips, and they wanted to ensure, with respect to this one, that they would get the relief of this from the $2.5 million in case there was an issue with seeking town approval. They thought, and I'm not going to speak for them, I'm not going to say what Dr. Phillips thought. That was just part of their negotiations. We thought it was a fair deal, especially since the portion of the purchase price that was being forgiven was $2.5 million for that, as opposed to the $5 million for the pavilion and the early learning center. We valued those pieces that way, and that was the negotiation point of, we'll give you that language, but the 2.5 is what gets forgiven, as opposed to a larger number.
So are you saying, so the value for us was in the early learning center and the community, and the green space?
That's when we valued it. We were looking at that. Yeah, especially the early learning center, that was extremely valuable to us.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for clarifying that. I knew there was a reason. It wouldn't just be different. Okay, and then going on to the benefits piece with respect to the educational facilities, and I remember from the June 30th, or I'm sorry, from the June meeting, that if you listen to the members of the board, it was very clear that there needed to be a benefit to OCPS in order for this property to be transferred. That's what I heard from when people spoke. So I understand why those two pieces are in here, the educational, early learning, and the healthcare piece. With respect to the healthcare, the health hub, one of the concerns, again, that I've heard is that there actually is a lot of health care access near Eatonville. Within like a 10-minute drive, I think there's 8 different facilities. Can the services that are provided at this health hub, could that include doctors or nurses or practitioners providing services at Hungerford Elementary? So for example, what I'm thinking in my mind is Winter Park Health Foundation. They provide, someone has an earache, they can get kind of treated at school. So mom or dad or caregiver doesn't have to go pick them up at school and then take them to a doctor, and then they're missing school and they're missing work, and can they get there in time? So there's a real benefit to having a healthcare provider actually in the school. So could that be possible here?
I don't think the language as it currently is constructed would do that, but I think that's something we could, subsequently work out with Dr. Phillips, and I think that's certainly something that could be possible. It would probably require a second agreement to do that, but Dr. Phillips would have to get in there. They'd have to purchase the property first. They'd have to determine, get the healthcare facility up and running. They'd have to see what doctors, what practitioners, all of that are in there before they could make that commitment, obviously. But I think that's something that once we reach, if we reach an agreement here, that we could work out with them separately in a separate agreement. I think that's something that's possible.
Okay. That's great, because I think that would provide a benefit that is different than just healthcare in that area generally, which there's different opinions on whether that's needed or not. Okay, the second question I have is respect to the affordable housing and the priorities for our teachers. This is a basic question, so I assume we have an answer, but is this something that teachers are asking for?
Dr. Williams has gone through a whole bunch of initiatives for both our teachers and our support staff, things that, we've heard folks come up here, and you've been sitting here, obviously, and had teachers come up when they talk about wages. They say, it's hard to live and work in Orange County because it's hard to find a place that's affordable for us to live there based on what we get paid. Now, obviously, our ability to pay our teachers is based in large part on what the state legislature provides us in funding. But that is things that I've heard as part of negotiations in my former role, and even now sitting up here as your general counsel on this board, teachers have come in and said it's hard to live in Orange County because it's hard to afford it. So, they've been appreciative of these affordable housing initiatives. Dr. Williams has worked through a bunch of them, not only for our teachers, but for our support staff. So that has been something that our employees have asked for.
Okay, great. Thank you. And just to clarify, it's not just teachers and first responders that would be able to live in potential affordable housing. It is that would just be a priority.
That's correct.
But others would be able to live there too.
Absolutely. There are, in the affordable housing laws, there is issues that you have to make sure that when you do that, you're not having affordable housing that's not reflective of the community's makeup, racially, that kind of thing. So there's always folks who develop affordable housing always like to ensure we give priorities. We don't give guarantees because guarantees could mess up the ratio of the racial composition of the housing. So that's why it's talked about in priorities rather than guarantees.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Just a couple more. One, I believe I asked this at the September meeting, but I want to ask it again. As the mayor and the everyone's like, hurry up. No, as I guess the proposals for the town have been considered over the last, I would say probably a couple of months, has the town council of Eatonville, have they had an opportunity to present a plan to us to consider as well?
So the litigation's over. I can speak to it, and I'm still going to speak to it in generalities, right? As you remember, we had the litigation over the property by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and on behalf of the Southern Poverty Law Center wasn't the suing entity; it was the Association to Preserve the Eatonville Community. And part of potential settlement in that was us reaching an agreement with the town of Eatonville to transfer the property to them, and they offered us a potential lease purchase agreement. And this board, through our discussions, we did not settle the litigation on the terms that were proposed by the town of Eatonville. We have not, and I'm going to confirm this with Mr. Ruiz as well, but I don't believe the town has presented us an offer in the last couple of months with respect to, us transferring the property to the town of Eatonville. We have not received that. I understand that they've had town council meetings where this has been a robust discussion with the town council, and there's been no direction from the town council about providing us with an offer on that. So that's, as it sits here today, the town council hasn't presented us something in the last couple months. But there's been we haven't solicited it, obviously, and they haven't given it to us. I'll just leave it there.
Okay. So at any point, the town council, or I guess another entity, could have submitted a proposal or an idea as we have been talking through this. Is that the case?
They could have. We have, every once in a while, my office, we've gotten calls from potential developers saying, hey, is this something that we could submit proposals on? And, it's never gotten beyond the talking phases of that. Nobody submitted us a formal proposal for the purchase of the property. I mean, any entity could submit a proposal to us, and obviously we would take it in and we would look at it, but that hasn't happened.
Okay. Thank you. 2 more questions. One is, one of the risks I see for the school board is that an entity could sue us over this sale. If that happens, have there been conversations? Well, I did not see it in the agreement. Have there been conversations with Dr. Phillips about indemnifying the school board in the event litigation ensues over this potential sale?
So we had discussions. That was a point of negotiation with Dr. Phillips. We were not able to agree on that language. We asked for it, and Dr. Phillips didn't agree to it. Dr. Phillips has indicated if, they obtain the property and we get sued on it, that they're going to be involved in that circumstances. I think we can have conversations with them about, if them joining as an interested party in that circumstances, and our interests would be aligned. But we did have discussions about an indemnification clause. We were not able to obtain it as part of the negotiations.
So if they join as an interested party, what does that mean? Does that mean that they would help, that they would be doing some of the legal work and assuming some of the fees and work, or what does that mean?
If they were to request to join the lawsuit as an interested party, they would certainly have their own lawyers. They would, be asserting arguments on their behalf to say why the purchase and sale contract should go through and it should not be struck down by the courts. My office obviously is going to be able to raise different arguments and would raise different arguments on behalf of the board. Certainly concepts like sovereign immunity and, this a planning and discretionary level decision by the board that should be absolutely immune from suit. So we would raise those different issues on behalf of the board. So Dr. Phillips may have different arguments than us, but our joint interests would be aligned in that we would both be seeking in any litigation that the court throw out a lawsuit and allow the purchase and sale of the property to go forward.
Thank you for that. Did they commit to being involved in the litigation, or they just...
No, because at this I hesitate to say this, there's no current indication that we are going to get sued.
You got to be prepared.
Always. That's part of my job, to be prepared for that. We have been sued over the property before. There's no current indication that we are going to get sued. They haven't made a commitment to that. I would have a tendency to think that if we were to get a lawsuit, we would have, my office would have conversations with the folks at Dr. Phillips and their lawyers to readdress that situation. There's no firm commitment within the contract, but I would suspect we would be in talks very quickly upon receipt of a lawsuit.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, if we as a board do not approve this purchase and sale agreement, what are the risks of having this surplus land right now?
So the risks are, if we don't do this, there are provisions within the charter school statute that allow for vacant and unused property to be taken by a charter school on the same basis as other public schools within the, forgive me, I don't have the exact language of 1233 in front of me, but charter schools can come in and say, hey, that's a piece of property. We would love to, build our own facility on that. So we would like to take a portion of that land to do it. And I don't think that we would have the recourse to say no to them in that circumstance.
Okay. Is there a concern that, I've heard that there's potential bills being drafted that perhaps the state might have an ability to get this surplus land as well. Is that a possibility?
I've heard the same things that you've heard about potential legislation going into that effect. So, of course, that will require it to pass both houses of the legislature and be signed by the governor, and there are certainly roadblocks in that circumstance, but it's entirely possible that they could pass legislation like that, and I've heard potential legislation is in the works.
And in either of those cases, whether charter school or whether the state, in either of those cases, the town really doesn't have any say, and the school board doesn't really have any say. And so we both lose the ability to have any control over this property, right?
in that circumstances you lay out, the answer would be yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Vanos. Next up, we have Member Gallo.
Thank you. I just have a few questions. I want to follow up a little bit on what Member Vano said. And I think it's been answered. I just want clarification. So basically, the only thing that will revert to the town of Eatonville will be the green space in the pavilion. That's the only thing in the contract that says once completed, the town hall that will go to the town of Eatonville. Every other part of this agreement will remain under Dr. Phillips Charities.
So the green space, the pavilion, and the town hall property, yes. I hate to quibble with the word revert, but revert implies that it's going back to them.
It would be under the ownership
Right.
of
Right.
the city of Eatonville.
Yes, that's the only thing that would be transferred to the ownership of the town would be the green space, the pavilion, and the property for the town hall.
Okay, thank you. And then I have two more questions. So when we initially started these conversations and we were looking at the town of Eatonville and the land and the best use of it, I know that we spoke to the town of Eatonville really about their tax revenue and their need to be sustainable and have a larger tax roll, tax base to help them be successful. If the health hub, the early learning center, all stays under Dr. Phillips Charities and the lease goes to Dr. Phillips Charities, if nonprofits come in and run like the health hub or the early learning center, nonprofits usually are exempt from taxes. So how will that increase the tax rolls to the town of Eatonville? Being that was one of our major concerns. Like, how would that work if Dr. Phillips Charities was getting the lease money, so that wasn't going to the city of Eatonville? How is the city of Eatonville going to make money off taxes if they're nonprofits that are moving in?
I hate to admit this in public. They're still a private landowner, so I'm not necessarily sure they're exempt from property taxes there. But let me make sure. I want to look that up just to make sure.
Do we pay property tax?
No, we do not, because we are a government entity.
Okay. I'm just saying, and I don't know what the laws are with nonprofit. And so, thank you. Great. Of course. Yes.
Mr. I'm sorry. That mic is, thank you. It's just not picking up well. Is it on?
Okay. Okay, so they would be able to.
At this moment, that
benefit.
isn't the intention. It's not to lease it and generate revenues back to us. It is to make it available to the community. And so we would find the right nonprofit because they're going to be providing those services mostly at no cost.
So would that nonprofit generate a tax roll or any type
No,
of
it
taxes?
wouldn't. But those, again, remember, these are only small pieces of the total property. The
Right.
other
What kind of
portions of the
retail?
property after placemaking is taking place and you start building the other office buildings, retail, those become taxable.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to ask that question because I know the majority of conversations we have had is to ensure that the town of Eatonville increases their tax rolls and remains stable. And then my last question, we were talking about zoning and that the town council basically, if this were to go awry, which I don't think it will, Dr. Phillips Charities would own the land. They could sell the land, but it still falls under the zoning rules and regulations of the Eatonville Town Hall. But when we were discussing that, someone was shaking their head that that's not true. So I want to make sure that that the town of Eatonville City Council still has zoning authority over anything that gets built in their city.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure because some people were shaking their heads and I'm like, I didn't know if maybe certain laws were already in place. That
Yeah.
okay. And they're going to talk to us. Okay.
Yeah.
that's all I have. Thank you.
I see the same thing. I see heads going in different directions. So we definitely want. I see yeses. I see nos. We definitely want to hear. We want to hear from y'all. So, all right, Member Felder, and then I think we're going to hear from the town council members.
Okay, thank you. Maybe some of the questions have been already answered, but I was concerned about the fact that, number one, the town does get some money back if something any sales take place, but I think the president said that if nonprofits come in, the taxes, because our biggest concern was that that this town doesn't lose everything; they get some kind of financial benefit from all of this. That's my concern. And then I'm going to the worst case scenario. If we don't do anything, then there's a possibility that the government, the state, could come in and get the land and get all this stuff, charter schools and so forth, and then we get nothing because there's legislation now that stepped out yesterday regarding discussion of getting rid of property taxes. And our purpose, we want to make sure that Edenville be able to get some taxes, but if they eliminate that, oh God. So there's just a lot, but I'm looking forward to hearing from the city council representatives from Edenville to express some of their thoughts about this. But I know as a board member on this board, my concern is that the town benefits as much as possible. And again, I will reiterate my appreciation for the Dr. Phillips Charities coming in and doing what we can do to maintain that land, to do what we can do, and not just it's out there for grabs. That's not what we want to do. So that was it. I'll listen to them and then I'll hear. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. All right. Now turning to the town, is there what's y'all's preference? Is there one person who's speaking on behalf of the? I'm sorry. I see. You all tell me what you. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Please. And again, I'm not privy to know whether you speak with one voice or there are different opinions. I just want to make sure we are open to hear from all members.
We want to address the contract. We have our council here. We have Andrew Hand, our general counsel for the town. We have our CEO, Marlon Daniels, to speak on the contract. Then we have our council members here. We're going to speak on what they have, and myself, Vice Mayor Theo Washington. So we'll come up after they talk about the contract.
All right, thank you. And sir, if you could introduce yourself.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Andrew Hand. I'm with the law firm Shepard Smith, Hand and Brackens. Our firm provides counsel to the town. Mr. Cliff Shepard is the town attorney, and I'm here on behalf of the town as well.
Thank you.
I'm here with an ask, and you'll probably hear a few different things from the town council members. But what I have been asked to ask you all is, and I don't know what the time frame is for consideration of this particular agreement, but is for at least a 90-day extension or a time frame, beyond the next meeting, to allow the town to have that voice and communicate with Dr. Phillips, to communicate with the school board, have some input before the dotted line is signed on at least some of the terms of the contract. And why 90 days? A number of reasons, really. First of all, the contract is hot off the press, very, very new. It just has made its way into the hands of the town over the holidays, and not everyone has had the ability to fully review it and really understand what is going on in the contract. Certainly, some of the explanations today have been helpful, but not everyone has had access to that yet. In addition, as I said, the town really would like to have some time to participate in defining some of the agreement terms with both the school board and in interacting with Dr. Phillips. vet any land uses, potential uses, look at what currently is in the comprehensive plan to see, how this would match up with what is currently out there. I would point out when we talk about zoning, when we talk about comprehensive plans, yes, the town does have control, does have those as regulatory tools, but they're not a magic wand, and certainly the town cannot go and undercut a project after it's been proposed. And so there are constraints which the town doesn't have, a full array or arsenal to say, no, it's not a complete yes or no. There are constraints. And so that's one of the reasons to really have a voice up front and ensure that this dialogue takes place once again before that dotted line is signed. In addition, of course, I really appreciate the comments on tax base. That is absolutely, and of course, Eatonville is a unique place for many different reasons. And what is good for Winter Park, Maitland, Windermere, some of the cities, isn't necessarily the most advantageous for Eatonville. And really considering and looking at that tax base, having those dialogues, those conversations up front, I think is absolutely critical, because this is the last open space land left in Eatonville. Certainly one of the very last, significant parcels like this. Well, the only parcel like this, and in Orange County where we see a scarcity of land. So it's absolutely critical to have these conversations, and so that's why I'm asking that, before there is any execution of the agreement, that there be a time frame extension to allow these conversations to occur, to allow the town to participate in the conversations and be a part of this.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you
for your input.
Councilman Wanda Randolph.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair, and everyone here on the board. So thankful and grateful for this opportunity to stand here before you. My name is Wanda Randolph, Councilwoman, Town of Eatonville, and I'm pleased to have the other council members and those from the Town of Eatonville to also be in the right presence for what we're addressing today. Our concern is basically about survival. What is in the best interest of the Town of Eatonville? What is in the best interest of our residents in the Town of Eatonville? The contract does not really agree to the values and the objectives that we have for Eatonville. We are looking for financial stability for the next years to come. There's a lot of things in the contract that does not actually identify what the use of the land will be. It appears to us, and also to me, that out of the 117 acres of property, there's only a small portion of the property in the contract that identifies exactly what the property would be used for. Also, I had listened to our general counsel on the board. Thank you very much for the information. The 117 acres of property, even for $14 million, that is highway robbery. And I know the property has to be worth at least about over 50, 60, maybe $100 million. Since you have not had a survey in the last 2 to 3 years, or maybe even longer, it would be very interesting if we know exactly what the value of the property is. I believe in Eatonville that we should have the consideration to own the property 100%. We asked for a 90-day extension in order to bring back facts, figures, and our plan as to how are we going to get this done. We can get this done in the same manner of Dr. Phillips. However, we would like to work with Dr. Phillips. We're not ruling them out at all. If we are given the land, if they want to, they can build the development. Just let us own the property. It is an advantage. It will be an advantage for us to own the property. And when I listen to some of the milestones that was mentioned earlier, some of these milestones does not give us very much in the town of Eatonville to survive. We have between $8 to $9 million budget. We have $52 million in projects right now in Eatonville that's allocated to Eatonville for our infrastructure that we have in the town. We are going to need revenue in order to stay a governmental agency. We acknowledge that the governor, the state of Florida, has proposed this tax situation that we all are basically taking a look at a bird's eye. We don't want to fall as a victim into that circumstances that we're not able to pay our bills. We're not able to carry on the services and the operations that are needed in Eatonville in order for us to survive as a town. We do not want to be the one lost town in the nation, like some of the other black towns have completely failed because they did not have enough funds and revenue to keep the town going because of lack of development. The residents of Eatonville are very emotional about the property because it is the largest parcel that we have in the town of Eatonville. After this, if it doesn't work, there's no more property for us to go at the rate of development that we are going after today. So we're asking you to humbly consider all the facts, all of the information that has been presented today on behalf of the town of Eatonville and the officials and our legal counsel, that we stand strong on the facts and the objectives for what we want to accomplish. So that way we can continue to be a party of Orange County. And Chair Jacobs, I have been very passionate about this. This is one of the things that Eddie Cole wanted. He talked to me so many times about you and your leadership. And I know right now, in his own spirit, if he's here, I know he's looking down upon us. And I just want to thank each and every one of you all for taking the time to listen and to understand what we're doing, how this is going to impact our community. We don't have a big business base like Orlando, or Longwood, or Altamont. We just don't have that here. We have very limited businesses in our town. We want to grow our town because we believe that when we grow our town and grow the businesses, it's going to be a win-win for all of us. We need to make sure that you consider, and we're asking you to consider all the facts, all of the information that's being provided today to help us to move along so that way we can have future generations in years to come. Thank you very much, and may God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Councilman Randolph. We have a new elected, appointed councilwoman here as Jordan Ware. She's been appointed 5 days ago. So she's going to come up and she have some experience on this.
Good afternoon. Oh, look at there. But thank you all for considering. My name is Councilwoman Jordan, and yes, I am 1 week old today in this newly appointed position. But I am a longtime resident of the historic town of Eatonville, and that same property that we are discussing, that's the property that I grew up on. Okay, I grew up there playing everything from basketball to football, running track. That land is super important to myself as well as the rest of the residents. What I'm hearing and what I have read in this contract, there are some terms that continue to be used. Good faith, I heard someone say trust, and I heard someone say transparency. That is not what we have been given from the Dr. Phillips organization, with all due respect. All right? They did not come before this board in the development of this contract. So that's why it's very difficult for me to hear and to understand. Sometimes it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And that is my point. The way that this has come to be, it has not been fair to the council. Our mayor, she went and spoke for us, right? We are a 5-member board. What I'm asking is that you all please allow us the time, 90 days minimum. We're going to be going into a new election period. We will have a new mayor. Things are changing hands in our community right now. 90 days will take us through March. We will have someone else in office. At that moment, she was the one that spoke on our behalf, but she's also the one that is departing the ship. All right? She's leaving. So she will not have an opportunity to write. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but she will not be with us any longer. So my plea to you all, respectfully to Dr. Phillips, is to please grant us the extension. Please go back and look at the other leased land agreement that we were in, where you all were going to give us that property for $1. $1. That has been something that was on the board. Please reconsider. I know you guys want to get this taken care of. Yes, we have been in this thing for years. Remember, I'm a longtime resident of the town. I want to see that land develop. We deserve to have that land developed. I concur. However, the way that we have entered into this agreement just has not been fair. Please give myself, the rest of the council, an opportunity to put our heads together, and we can come up with a plan and help us fund. We love to work with Dr. Phillips, but I have a saying: if we don't own the land, we do not own the plan. It's simple, folks. Right? So please, thank you so much. My name is 1-week-old Councilwoman Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. 1-week-old Jordan. Sorry, do it the wrong way.
Thank you.
1-week-old Council.
I'm back again.
Jordan.
I thank you guys for giving us this audience to again on this behalf. I did have some words, me and Eddie Cole, when we was giving away turkeys back in the before Thanksgiving, and we did speak on this situation here in the parking lot about the school board. He did say keep fighting on this here. He did tell them those words there, just keep fighting. We'll probably get a chance to get this. But on my hand here, I like to say, Edenville is not broke. We're not broke. We have funds for affordable homes, $4.3 million set aside. We have $2 million for land acquisitions that sits right now. We're not broke. We do have funds to operate this property. I think when you tore the school down, you guys gave us 6 acres. And when you done that, we won the CRA board at the time. That CRA board went out and got Rose and Brito to put up a museum next to the library and a public safety building when y'all gave us those 6 acres. And y'all have it right now fenced where you guys gave it to us. It's all fenced in, the 6 acres. And that's what we went to the drawing board with when y'all gave us those 6 acres. A museum and a public safety building. That's what that CRA board did. And that's the power of having the CRA in our community. They do things that the town can't do. They have funds they can get. They have banks we can go to and get funding. This gives us the opportunity to do those things. That's one of the things that I see that we can do for the town. Because with CRA in the town working together. And the other thing I want to speak about, if the deal goes through, I like to see in the contract amended to give the town first right of refusal buying property. If they want to sell some property, give the town the first right to buy the property. if y'all go with this contract. Put us in that contract. So if they sell anything, Edenville have the first choice. That's what I like to see. And when y'all talking about amending anything in your paragraphs, whatever, put us in there. Because we're just talking over us. We're just talking about Dr. Phillips School Board. I like to see Edenville say, hey, if this go through, if they're selling the property, Edenville have the first right. And with the DOT property, with the retention pond they put there for the I-4, that was kind of disrespectful for the school board to integrate in that contract, because we gave I-4 land for retention when they built the first I-4. Then they came along to redo I-4. You gave them this 6 acres to put a retention here. It would have been closer to the Wildmore Road. We taught them to move it back because it would have been up on the road. So if you look at the first plans of DOT, they would have put it closer to Wildmore Road. We asked them, they're supposed to give us that property, the extra acres in front for our development. That's one of the things they talked to us about. So yes, we need to be a part. I'm glad we're at the table now, but I think that we definitely need to do the 90-day extension. Gives us time to put our birds in the right hat and get everything together, all us together with the attorney, CRA, in the town, to get these things together for us to come together again to say, this is what we can do with the school board. And like Councilwoman Jordan said, if you don't control the land, you don't control the plan. So please look out for us and let us know that, hey, give us the time to get our things in order. I think we do have it in order. Like I said, we're not broke. I think we have, if we get the time in to do some things, I think we'll see where we go working together with all 3 parties, Edenville School Board and Dr. Phillips, to be a part of this. That's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I was neglect to mention something, just 2 things, 2 or 3 more. And that is that one of my concerns, well, number 1 is this: we have the highest millage rate in Orange County, 7.2938 for the town of Edenville. So that says a lot. The reason why we are advocating for financial stability in our properties. Now, one question, it's not really a question. It was something that I stumbled on doing some research on properties. We have one property in Eatonville that pays 0 taxes. An apartment complex. I believe there's about 80 or 84 apartments on this one property. And that is, no, Wayne Dench, I'm sorry, Wayne Dench, 0. Can we afford that in Eatonville? 0 taxes? We also have one other facility that pays $699 1 year to the town of Eatonville, and that's the West Kennedy Apartments. Now, I brought that up because I would like to know from the Dr. Phillips team, what type of housing units are we going to, that you plan in Eatonville? Would it be a reduction in tax base or taxes that we can get in Eatonville? I would like to know what is your plan as far as the taxes in Eatonville, property taxes for these apartments? Because they're identified by a non-exempt code, tax code, under Orange County Appraiser's Office, because I checked it out. And so I'd just like to know from you all if you can explain that to me, because that's very important as far as the development, as far as us remaining stable for the next couple of years. If we're not getting anything, we're going to be out of business. Okay, can you address that, please?
Please.
If I understood you correctly, you wanted to know what type of housing are we planning to build? Housing, and I'm assuming you're meaning multifamily housing.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, at this point, we don't have a plan for multifamily housing. That's not in the plan. If you look at the priority projects, none of them were about housing. What we've said, and what I've said publicly many times, what we as groups have to work together on is a housing strategy. And in that strategy, as you look at pieces of land, then you'll define what can be taxable and what's not taxable. So it would be premature to say we're going to build something that's going to be non-taxable, knowing that we need to figure out how to increase the tax base for the town.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm quite sure there's somewhere in your mind that you have already precluded in your mind about what you want to put on these properties. No one is going to take 117 acres of land and don't have an idea about what they're going to put on the property.
No, we have a very clear idea that collaboration is the key to success. It's not about just building buildings. It's about building and strengthening the community. And the only way you can do that is working with residents and the community. No matter what any one of us thinks can go there, if we don't work with the community, it won't be successful.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Chair Board, my name is Marlon Daniels. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the town of Eatonville. My purpose here today is to basically conclude what all council members, we have various ideas of what should be taking place. And Mr. Prather, that's a good segue into what I was going to talk about, collaboration. So what I've been hearing from the board lately is, how do we collaborate? I think the biggest aspect is that the town council believed that there wasn't a collaborative approach to finding a solution to this property. So I'm here today on behalf of the town council directive that they're asking for that 90-day extension. You say, why 90 days? That 90 days is to have a strategic outlook and a strategic plan to sit down with Dr. Phillips Charities to maybe tweak the contract, because I think we've heard that a lot today about the contract, how it's vague and all the different things. But if we could have that opportunity to sit down with Dr. Phillips Charities to go through and determine other aspects, like we've heard that people say we don't want medical. So what do we substitute in instead of putting medical? What else would the town of Eatonville like to see there? If we can get those things moved around, maybe we can come to a more collaborative approach. We've heard from town council that they want to own the property. They're asking that we be allowed to have the same contract opportunity as Dr. Phillips Charities have. That was never proposed to us. It was given to Dr. Phillips, was not given to the town of Eatonville. Also, the comp plan and land use. I've heard it said a couple times today that, we can make changes or it's in control, but if it's already in the comp plan and the land use of what's allowed on that property, Dr. Phillips Charities will be able to do that without necessarily the approval of the town council because it's already there. Now, if they're asking for adjustments, then we have to go back to our planning and zoning and all those things. But if it's already zoned for those entities, so say it was for a grocery store, why would they have to come back to us if it's already zoned for it?
Is it zoned for it now? Yep. So it would have to go through a zoning process.
If on certain things. So what I'm saying is, if there's things that's in this plan, these 5 milestones, there are some things, according to our planner, that has to make adjustments. So it would not be able to go through because it's not in compliance with our code, with our comp plan. So that's what I was saying, Member Gello. Okay. Also, another question that has arisen from the board is, we've combined 100 acres with the 17 acres tract. How come that cannot be separated and the town be able to control the 17 acres down on the other end? And finally, we're just asking that we can all come together collaboratively to make a sensitive approach to a town that has historic values, that's historic preservation, and that don't want to be erased. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Salamanca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the council for coming and bringing up some of the questions and conversations that are happening in the town as well. I think I've been on this board now almost 4 years, and to the question you brought up of what is in the best interest of Eatonville, and this board has always wanted to do what is in the best interest. And it's my understanding we have looked and considered every single agreement and proposal that has come our way, of which there's been a lot of for-profit proposals, individuals who want to develop the land to profit from that. Might bring in some taxes, but really it will be very particular. We did consider the $1 purchase agreement that for a variety of legal reasons and legislative reasons, it was not viable for us to do that. But this board did consider that for an extended period of time as well. There was obviously the lawsuit and some of the questions that came around that. And maybe this is for general counsel, have we received at least maybe the last 4 years that I can speak to, that I've been on this board, in the last 4 years, has the town of Eatonville, the city commissioners, given us any proposal about what to do with this land aside from the $1 purchase?
Aside from the $1 purchase, which, let's all be clear, we got that as part of
the lawsuit,
a settlement agreement to settle the lawsuit. And it was, since that's been thrown out here, I'm going to go ahead and disclose the terms of it. I think I can do that anyways. It was a lease purchase agreement for $1 a year with the right to purchase it in year 2, which means this was a $2 deal for this entire property. That's what it was.
Right.
And I brought this to this board in executive sessions as part of whether or not to settle the lawsuit on that basis. This board did not give me direction to settle that lawsuit on that basis and enter into that lease purchase agreement. Other than that, I am aware of no other agreement that's come to us from the town of Eatonville with regard to purchase of this property.
Right. And so I think I hear your request for give us more time, 90 days to look through this. I guess I am skeptical and I have a lot of questions as to what is going to happen in 90 days that hasn't happened in 4, 5, 6 years that we have been waiting for a high quality proposal of development. All the time we've had an opportunity for folks to come to us with that, and it hasn't happened. If I just think shorter term to the last time that Dr. Phillips' charity came to this board and Mr. Palmer, maybe you remember the date. When did they come to us to give us the proposal of the master plan? And they talked about all the different community meetings. Do you know what date that was?
I know we approved the MOU on September 30th, and I think we had
Was that the same day? I thought it was a different.
I think there was a work session before it.
There was a session before,
Yeah, and we
wasn't
had
it?
a June work session about.
It was June.
So hold on, back up.
Please.
There was
Yeah.
a June work session
Yes.
on the future of the property in Eatonville. Then we had a work session with respect to the MOU that we were going to enter into, and I believe it was the day of the September 30th meeting. We had the work session in the afternoon. We had the meeting in the evening. I believe the town council was permitted to speak
And they did, yes.
at that point in time about their concerns with the MOU, and they voiced concerns during the meeting when the board voted to approve the MOU, and a lot of the same stuff that you're hearing
Yeah.
today is what we heard back then.
And I think something that came up in that June meeting was Dr. Phillips' charity came up here and talked about the multiple 5 or 6 community meetings that they held to get to the point of the master plan. There was feedback from the community of this, in which from that point of June to today, the town of Eatonville has also had time to provide more feedback or come to this board with a proposal, and I have not seen any of that unless I'm missing it. And so I think I'm skeptical on what 90 days is going to do to really alter or move the needle, to give us a proposal that is as thorough, high quality as the one we have before us in this MOU and ahead. So I'll just state out like my hesitation there. on the request of give us 90 more days. The second thing comes with something that was brought up in our questioning earlier, which is, what is the cost to Orange County School Board as well as to the town of Eatonville and its citizens of us today or in the coming months not doing anything with this land? And that means we have this surplus land. That is my biggest concern. With us having surplus land, we are opening up the risk of having no say whatsoever as to what happens with this land. We're going from approving an agreement that is the beginning of a collaborative process, the beginning of the opportunity to have input as to what happens with this land, within the scope of the areas we talked about today, right? But with the option of amending an agreement if the town and Dr. Phillips agree that there's better uses and purpose of this land, to leaving it as surplus, in which case a charter network or the state of Florida could come in and do whatever they want with this land. That is a very high risk for us to continue to do nothing with this. And so the option of what we have before us, which I do believe, obviously is not a perfect plan. No plan's going to be perfect, and this is the beginning of a 10-year plan, is the best that this board has seen from answering the question of what is the best interest of the town. We have not seen an alternative. And there is a really high risk of us doing nothing to it, right? This board, and I know that a lot of conversation was had or comments were made about what happened with the restoration and all the things that have happened with this land. Obviously, not all of us, most of us were not here during the time when some of those decisions, poor or not, on what to do with the land were done. I mean, this has been decades of what this relationship has been. So I can't fix the mistakes that this board or other leadership might have done with this land, but what we have to do is find the best use, best interest of this land moving forward. We're never going to be able to fix the mistakes that were previously done. And I don't want to spend too much time continuing to rehash that, because there is not a lot we can do today as elected officials. And to the financial stability, right? I think we talked about this, right? The land today addresses some parts of the property, but not all parts of the property. There is still property to be used for other purposes or development. That's kind of an open conversation. But this property that we're talking about today, there are thoughtful approaches to how this becomes financially stable, will bring in revenue. This is an organization who's not for profit, whose job is to make a better community. Some of the other things we heard on the for-profit development of this area was really going to benefit a few folks, a very limited number of folks. And so no plan will be perfect, but I do believe this one has the best well-being of all the citizens of the community into place. And unfortunately, I just don't know that 90 days is going to make a difference in this. And every day that goes by, we do risk losing this land and having absolutely no say. So those are just my general thoughts. I do appreciate folks coming and communicating. I think there are a lot of opportunities moving forward from signing this MOU onward, starting this process for a lot of input, a lot of approval. The agreement that sits before me today has incentives for both the town Eatonville and Dr. Phillips Charity to show up authentically with transparency and to do a good job, because there is incentives on both sides of this agreement to do and get things done. And so, if they don't do what they're supposed to do, they're going to pay a pretty high price for this land as well. And so they're incentivized as a nonprofit organization. They don't want to be losing $13 million. And if we can't work together on this land, ultimately, yes, there is possibility that this land goes away, but that is already a possibility as is today with it being surplus land. So thank you for being here. I think that's just a little bit of how I'm feeling on the past June, September, and now this meeting, because I know we keep going back to some of the original points, but we really have been thinking and talking about this for a really long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Salamanca. Member Vanos.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Town Council for being here today, and for sharing, and for the administration too, and for sharing your thoughts, and for the conversations that you've had with me, sharing your thoughts and your questions. I hope that I asked most of them. I took copious notes during all of the meetings, so hopefully you feel that those questions have been asked. I did want to, I think I share concerns about the 90-day delay and extension. One of the concerns, and this was raised by Councilman Washington, was, I believe, and maybe others, is that, 90 days brings us to about March, and you stated, and we know that there's an election in March. And so I could see a situation where then there's an election, and then there's new people that are elected to the town council, and then they say, well, we haven't had a chance. We haven't had a chance to review this. We haven't had that opportunity. And so what I want is your input, and I want your expertise, and I want your knowledge of Eatonville to be a part of this. But what I fear is that there will always be a reason to delay, and there will always be a reason to kind of honestly just drag this process out longer. And as I said before, the town of Eatonville deserves progress, and they deserve this land to be developed, but they do deserve it to be developed in a way that is beneficial to you, with the tax base, with your concerns raised about housing and the healthcare issue. So, when when Baker Barrios began these workshops 2 years ago, I have heard in the last couple of weeks, I understand that not everyone in Eatonville agreed with their process. But that's okay. That doesn't mean, but silently protesting is not making progress. Silently not attending or going there and not saying anything to these workshops is not moving the needle. It's not really getting what you want. It's just not participating. And at a minimum, the existence of these workshops, I would think would give the town a reason to say, okay, there's action happening here. We better develop our own plan. We better make a plan. We better decide what it is that we want. We better explain why this process isn't the right one for the town of Eatonville, why it shouldn't have been used, why it's not appropriate, why, historical towns deserve something different. Like, I don't know what it is, but those were not publicly expressed. And to just not attend, or to attend and not say anything, is just, again, I feel that that's just not moving the needle forward, particularly when the town was on notice that things were happening. Things were happening in the town, whether you participated or not. And I also had the pleasure last month of attending one of the ribbon cuttings for the CRA for the town of Eatonville for some of the new houses that are being developed, and really appreciate the work that they're doing, because I again went on tour yesterday. I saw the work. I saw some houses. I saw different properties. But one of the things that stood out to me when I was there was that I believe it was Mr. Johnson or someone from the town council saying, or someone from the CRA saying that the CRA had been in existence for about 25 years. And last month was the first time they had a brick and mortar project that they had been able to accomplish. And that's a huge accomplishment, and it should be celebrated, because it means the town of Eatonville is moving in the right direction, and they're getting things done. I love it. I love that for the town. I love that for the CRA. But it also concerns me that the town may not be ready to develop a 100-acre parcel of property. And I listened to the mayor. I listened to her comments during the last meetings, and her reasons for moving from wanting the $1 lease purchase agreement to her I think a couple of things probably came into play. One of them she publicly stated was she did not believe that the town of Eatonville had the expertise, the experience, or the personnel to develop this project. This is the mayor saying this about the town, and she loves the town. She is a long-term resident of the town, so I don't think that's an insult to the town. I think it's something that has to be considered by us as well. And I just don't know whether that experience is there to develop the property. And again, I also don't know whether there is the financial resources to develop the property. I had a train of thought that I just lost, but I might come back to it in a second. I did though want to bring up something that also Councilmember Washington stated about, could the town of Eatonville have a right of first refusal if Dr. Phillips in the future sells a portion of this property? Is that a possibility?
Mr. Pomeroy.
It would take a rewrite of the contract that we currently have now. I would have to go back to Dr. Phillips and negotiate that and see. I mean, we could ask for it if that's this board's desire. I don't know how Dr. Phillips would react to that, and I wouldn't presume to speak on their behalf, but that would be a subject of negotiations.
Okay, thank you. I also did, and I guess I did have one more question for the town council, and that is with respect to your comp plan, what portions of it, what portions of it are not consistent with this purchase and sale agreement? And you correct me if I'm wrong, I think this would be the comp plan that is pending approval. Is that right?
It's afternoon, so good afternoon, board, Madam Chair, residents and everybody here. Okay, let's start with the comp plan. The comp plan has a specific section in it that identifies what's allowed on the school board property already. To go into contract requiring something different from that creates a problem. Because your contract says, if Dr. Phillips makes reasonable effort to put in a early learning facility, to put in a hub, health hub, those things are not in there. So you're basically contract zoning Eatonville's future. You're doing it because those things aren't in that document anywhere. So if they can't get what they want and Eatonville does not approve what they want and go against their comp plan, they get to buy the property for half the price. Does that make sense? That doesn't make sense at all.
What uses does the comp plan allow for this area?
There's a whole section in it that specifically talks about the school board property, and I'm sure the CEO will make sure you have that so you can make a clear, definitive judgment about the contract and the things that's in it. I'm trying to control my emotions. As the redevelopment director of the town, I have not even heard from Dr. Phillips at all. And I'm responsible for making sure the town gets redevelopment per the plan. And I heard someone say earlier that they compared what was to Orange County waiting for approval. That is the redevelopment plan that the town council and the community has adopted. There's no consideration about any of that stuff that's in that plan in what they're proposing. So we're going to have the school board basing a contract on hypotheticals that's not inconsistent, that's not consistent with the comp plan as it's written today. And we have Orange County government getting ready to approve a CRA master plan
which everybody in Eatonville has weighed into, that conflict, that has to be consistent with the comp plan. Let me say that. The redevelopment plan has to be consistent with the comp plan. But what they're proposing is not consistent with neither. But you're getting ready to vote and approve a contract knowing that these basic policy issues from this municipalities are not consistent with what you're being asked to vote for. And you're allowing in that contract forgiveness on issues that are not in the comp plan. I don't understand how you can do that.
We can do that.
I understand you have the authority to do whatever
Yes.
you want to do by statute.
Yes.
I understand
Okay,
that.
thank you.
But the contract itself is flawed because it's not consistent with Eatonville's comp plan.
Well, I guess my question then is that if that's actually the case, then that would mean that for every development that Dr. Phillips makes, because it is not consistent with the current plan, they would have to come to the town council
exactly.
for approval.
And if Eatonville said no, you're still obligated to give them forgiveness. So basically, you're holding Eatonville hostage, the contract zone for them.
Well, I mean,
we're not.
one way to think of it is that Eatonville's being held hostage. And listen, I understand the passion. I get it. I get it. I understand it. I understand the feeling of the town council members. I would not like what happened. And I, the mayor has spoken to this, and I would not like what have happened either. I understand why you felt excluded. I understand why it felt probably a little bit embarrassing. I understand how it felt surprising and being caught off guard. I get that, and I would feel the exact same way. But I guess my point is that you are still included in that conversation if they have to come to you, well, not to you, but to the town council, or maybe to you, I don't know, for any variance or any zoning or anything that's not consistent with the comp plan. In some ways, to me, that makes it feel like you have actually more power.
I'm not dismissing the town's authority under its home rule governance. I'm not dismissing that at all. What I'm saying is the contract that's being proposed with those caveats that's in there are already being proposed not in compliance with the comp plan. So basically, you're telling Eatonville, unless you amend your comp plan to do what they want, then the school board's going to forgive all this money, which makes no sense to me at all. We should go in this saying whatever Eatonville's comp plan is, that's what you're allowed to do. Take away the obligation of forgiveness based upon what's already exists. The policy is already there, specifically dealing with the school board property. It's already there. It was put there in 2015. So it didn't just happen overnight. It's been there. So when they came to you and came to the town, they already knew what was in the comp plan. Why would you propose anything or contractually tell you if they don't do what's in, give us our approvals? Then that doesn't make sense.
So then what is your vision for that area?
Like I said, I'm going to yield to the comp plan. I have not read it. If Miss Tamir, what's her name? Sorry, if she was here, she'll be able to really dissertate everything you need to know. But short notice for her, because we're coming off the holidays, she was not able to be here. So when we talk about the 90-day request or 30-day request, as you heard me say last night, it's only to get our ducks in a row to be able to present to you a clear, concise path to work with Dr. Phillips. I have a great deal of respect for Mr. Prather. He spoke at one of my events as my keynote speaker. I have no problem with Dr. Phillips. This ain't about Dr. Phillips. This is just making sure Eatonville gets the best deal possible. And not basing a contract upon things that are already starting out in violation of the comp plan.
Well, and I guess can anyone speak to what the comp plan allows?
The expert is not here that can do that.
Okay.
Well,
I guess, okay.
It could be mute today.
All right, thank you.
It won't be mute forever.
Anything else, Member Vanos, at this time?
Not at this
All
time.
right, thank you. Member Ferrant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some interesting conversations and thoughts. I agree with the rest of the board here that I feel frustrated. I've been on this board now for 4 years. This is something that's been going on since 2010. Dr. Phillips Charities came in. They have an incredible plan that has been in partnership with the community at community meetings. Your community was here back in June or September, one of those meetings, or at both. We've heard from adults, children, grandparents, all ages, who are excited about the hope and the future that Dr. Phillips Charities, this partnership, could be for the town of Eatonville. And sadly, it is being sabotaged or attempted to be sabotaged by your own council members. I just feel like, maybe not all, but there are those who come up and there's a constant, we need an extension, we need time, we need time. Time is running out. True leadership sees a great opportunity and seizes the moment. We cannot continue to drag this on. You're going to continue losing town members who are going to say, we're done. We can't continue waiting around for a better future. Now is the time to stand up and be bold and courageous and say, we're going to shake hands, we're going to have trust. It's an incredible contract. But bottom line, I won't continue prolong this, but bottom line, what I hear, the town wants control and is frustrated that they will not have control of everything. They want the land, you want control of the land, you want it for cheap. You have Dr. Phillips Charities who is coming and partnering. Look at what they have done in Orlando. It's amazing. I feel like you have gold in front of you and you're arguing because you want better gold. You have it right here in front of you. This is incredible. I will be standing in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ferrant. Member Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank you to the Town Council for coming today. We appreciate your words and your comments. I won't belabor what my fellow board members have said. I think that Member Vanos did an excellent job of laying out the timeline of what's happened to Eatonville on how we got to this, where we are. I do think that this is a good plan for Eatonville. I don't know as much as you all do, but for years and years and years, we've been having conversations about Eatonville and what to do with the property and how to responsibly give the property so that Eatonville can find value in it and earn off of it and contribute to your city. And I think that this will do. I think this, with the agreement with Dr. Phillips, I think provides that. I can only speak for myself, so I will. I encourage that collaboration. I encourage you to collaborate with Dr. Phillips. And if there's something better than a medical center that is the needs of Eatonville, because you know the needs of Eatonville better than we do, collaborate together. We've already said we'll be amendable to any type of amendment that makes sense for the town of Eatonville to ensure that you guys are, that Eatonville and your citizens are prosperous and that this works for everybody, because that's what we want. So I encourage that collaboration. I don't think us saying yes or no to the contract today is void of that collaboration or of those conversations. I think that they can still happen and we can make amendments to this agreement that benefit both sides. I don't see what that can change. I do think by postponing it 90 days will tank this entire endeavor. And as a board member, I'm just not willing to do that. I think the time is now to move forward. So I will also be standing in support of this. But again, please collaborate and work together. And if there's something that needs to change, bring it back to us, and we'll do what's if it's best for Eatonville, that's what we want. We want what's best for Eatonville. So we're never going to not listen to those proposals. So thank you very much. I appreciate everybody being here today. I want you to know that we heard everything that everyone said, and I hope that this truly is good for all parties involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gallo. I think Member Gallo, Member Vanos, Member Salamanca have said it very well. I would like to ask Mr. Palmerini, I hate to put him on the spot, but we've had so many attempts to find a way to ensure this property is put to the best possible uses to benefit Eatonville and to preserve a record of history and to comply with statutory requirements which change and are continuously becoming more perilous when it comes to this property. That I can tell you personally, I feel like we are a ticking time bomb. And you may or may not know this, but just in the last legislative session, new legislation was passed that requires us, for instance, for those 185 seats, if a School of Hope wants to operate, they can use those seats. We have to provide all the services, and they get to keep all the revenue they collect from the state, and not pay any sort of rent or the vacant property. Any vacant property that we have is available, as has been mentioned, by charter schools that aren't going to pay any tax revenues, but will ultimately make a private gain to a private corporation. So the longer we sit on this property, the more likely we are to see no tax revenue for you, no offset to Orange County Public Schools, and no public good, as I perceive, is so important to Eatonville and to its history. Mr. Palmerini, let me speak just for a moment, though, to the issues of the comp plan and trying right now to research and to figure out exactly what is on the sites that is currently owned by Orange County Public Schools. This is, if none of these uses are allowed on any of those 117 acres, then you're right, they will have to come through and ask for it. Eatonville very much wanted a museum. You came to us, you asked us to support the museum. We supported the museum. So if they come and they want to put a museum, but it's not in your comp plan, why would you not want to change your comp plan to do something you already asked us to support? I'm sorry, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. You wanted a museum. Yes, they will have to ask you to change that, to allow them to do what you asked us to support you doing, and they're not going to charge you to do it. So nobody's holding anybody hostage here. They're asking to do what you wanted them to do. But if you don't let them do a museum, then that's true. They get forgiven because you wouldn't let them do what you wanted to do. This is not contract zoning with them. This is ensuring that if they live up to this plan and do their very best and you just say no, that we can't say, well, you still owe us for what you're supposed to build, even though you can't build it. So that's the museum. The Early Learning Center. Okay, we've been sued because we are not supposed to use this property for anything but education. Okay, we went through, how many years did we go through a lawsuit? How much money did we spend defending the fact that we had already settled this with the trust who had the right, if anybody, to question whether the agreement that we entered into with the trust, where we paid the trust to lift the provision that required us to operate it as an educational facility, the entire 117 acres, when we didn't need the entire 117 acres, and you weren't getting any tax revenue from the entire 117 acres. So we wanted to be able to sell that property to create uses that we thought were good for Eatonville. We worked with Eatonville. On 2 cases, we worked with Eatonville to come up with what you wanted on the property. The second time around, it was changed so that you would get, I forget how many millions of dollars if it went through, but it didn't go through. And each time, my recollection is each time there were changes, there were elections, different people in charge, and it fell through. Okay? This is what I have witnessed over the last 15 years. Every time a plan comes together and everybody seems to be on the same page, and then it falls apart. And each time, at least, the only thing that has happened is nothing has progressed and you haven't picked up any revenue, and we've maintained property. And at times it was, in bad condition, and rightfully you complained and we needed to take care of it. Absolutely, we did. But we've been at a stalemate. And this stalemate has the potential of taking away any future opportunity to do anything. We have a CRA. It's great we have a CRA. For anybody who doesn't know what the CRA is, it's an agreement with Orange County government that they would surrender all the tax revenue that Orange County government would usually take on that property. The Orange County government gets a portion of tax revenue for any property in Orange County because there's base levels of service that they provide. In the CRA case, they say, this is so important for redevelopment that you'll take that. And that's good, and I agree with that. But if the legislature goes forward and they put on the ballot the ability for citizens to vote to either eliminate or greatly reduce their property taxes, you know what that means to the CRA, right? It's not just your regular millage that operates, but that CRA also is either going to be annihilated or greatly reduced. So we're looking down a pipeline that is very scary for local governments, for cities, and for Orange County Public Schools. And ultimately, we are really all in this together more than I think you realize. And my heart has been with Eatonville long before I even thought about running for office. I care dearly and deeply about the history. I care about the future. And if I believed for a moment that postponing this for 90 days was going to get us to a better place, I'd be all in. But I am petrified that 90 days just gets us into a worse situation and just allows for an opportunity over this next legislative session to take away any ability to enter into this contract and any ability to move this forward in a direction that I've heard over and over again you want. So you're going to block an ELC when there was a lawsuit to insist that we do nothing but education. An ELC is only going to, an early learning center is only going to take up, I think, like 2 or 3 acres. This whole thing, we're talking about, 5, 6 acres that's committed. There's huge opportunities here. There's huge opportunities to actually come together. And I'm sorry it didn't happen. And I really am. I'm sorry it didn't happen better. I'm sorry that that we got to the point, as somebody said, in a way that you're not, I want to say you're not happy with, but I understand. I really do understand the resentment and why you would feel the way you would feel. As a county commissioner, I remember there were so many times when I was like, I feel like I'm at the final moment and decisions have to be made, and I wish I'd known sooner. But at the end of the day, you still have to make decisions. You have to make the best ones you can under the circumstances. For me, this is the best that I think we have. And I'm not saying we're settling, because honestly, I really think we have somebody who can make this happen. They can deliver the money. They can deliver what they're saying. And you could have a seat at the table to be talking about what happens to the rest of that property. You can be part of this team that I believe is going to move forward. I could be wrong. I think it's worth having this conversation about first right of refusal. As I kind of contemplate it, what does that mean exactly? Would it go out to bid? And okay. They have it. They put it out to bid, and then they get the proposals back, and then they say, you can buy it, but you have to pay top dollar, or do they just get an appraisal? There's a lot to be discussed in that, but it's worth having the conversation. But I personally think our time is up on this. Member Byrd, and then Dr. Vasquez, I'm sorry. All due respect, I usually allow the superintendent to interject.
Just a point that I would like the board to discuss. If we do look at the point of refusal, if I'm not mistaken, that's going to delay our actions, or is there another opportunity?
So there's one of two ways to go about it. You can first say, hey, the board wants us to discuss a right of first refusal. I go to Dr. Phillips to have the contract discussions with them. They'll either say yes or no to that, and that will take some time, right? The other option is to enter into the agreement as is, and then instruct me on the back end to go see if we can negotiate a right of first refusal. It wouldn't delay entry into the purchase and sale agreement. There's no guarantee that if we agree the purchase and sale agreement as is, that Dr. Phillips would agree to amend to give the town a right of first refusal. So that would be subject to negotiations with Dr. Phillips in that case. But you would have the underlying purchase and sale agreement done, and then we could work out negotiating with them on the right of first refusal.
Board members, let me go to Member Byrd, and then I'll come back to whoever's had suggested the right of refusal. And but I understand what you're saying. I mean, unless Dr. Phillips was unless there was no need to discuss any details of it, but I'm already sitting here myself thinking you have to figure out on what price. It's not like you know the value, and getting appraisals on land when the issues of zoning and comp plan and all of that play into the value is really challenging. I can see the reasons why I can see the reasons why I would have reservations being in that same situation, but go ahead.
Just one more point. You started to call on...
Yes, I did.
Okay.
For history, because I'm going off of what I'm remembering, and I hated putting you in this position because I know Woody Rodriguez, was... Well, actually, I was going to say he was, in that role, but you were here before he was here, so you have more history than he would have. Thank you. So
I took the liberty to go back and research BoardDocs before, because I thought we might get here. So in June of 2010, we entered into a purchase and sale agreement to sell the property to the town of Eatonville. And we also entered into a lease agreement that would allow the town to use the property during the pendency of the purchase and sale agreement before we closed. And that was in June of 2010. And over the next 9 years, the board was asked and gave 8 separate extensions to the town to close the deal. 8 separate ones. And we got to a point where There was a Sixth Amendment where the town actually had a Up Development. It was a third-party developer.
Yes.
To go ahead and basically pay the purchase price of the property, which at that point was $10 million. And we could never close on it. And in 2019, we got to the Eighth Amendment for the purchase and sale. The board there was a lot of discussion that night, and it was a 6-2 vote to say, we'll allow you to have through March 29th of 2019 to close on the deal. The deal never closed, and the original contract for purchase and sale went away. So then fast forward to September of 2019, we enter into an agreement that basically we were going to sell the property for $10 million. There was, going back there was appraisals on this property for $20 million back at that time. So there was actual appraisals for that. But we were going to put out requests for proposal, right? So the first request for proposal sort of went in, by the way, that was right before COVID hit. So everything like paused with respect to COVID. And then we issued a second request for proposal, and that second request for proposal, we had three bidders. None of them were deemed responsive. In the world of bidding, if they're not a responsive or responsible bidder for an RFP, you have to reject all bids. So none of the three developers that applied were deemed responsive. And then we had a third RFP, that we put out. That's the one where we ended up with Falcone, who was the responsive bidder. They agreed to buy the property for $14 million. And it went to, they needed some comprehensive plan changes to do the exact development they wanted to do, but it was mixed use. They had mixed use, my understanding, and in looking at the 2018 amendment to Eatonville's comp plan, our school board property is listed as mixed use. That's what I've been able to research here just in the 10 minutes since you've asked. So in 2023, 2021, we give the contract to Falcone. It ends up being Sovereign. They assign their rights to Sovereign. Sovereign goes to the town of Eatonville asking for the comprehensive plan changes in 2023. The town declines to adopt the comprehensive plan changes. Sovereign says, well, based upon their failure to adopt the comprehensive plan changes, we are going to go ahead and cancel the contract. And shortly before they canceled the contract was when we had the Association to Preserve the Eatonville lawsuit. If I remember correctly, it was about a week before. The Association to Preserve Eatonville filed a 2-count complaint against us to say, 1, we hadn't properly surplus the property, 2, that the property still contained the use restriction on it. Right. So that contract was canceled. We went through the litigation. Since we didn't have any current plans to sell the property, the court dismissed the litigation, said, look, there's no pending current dispute for us to decide. And at that point, we did not have the property up for sale. Now, the only thing, we have this board on September 30th, and I'm going to talk about the litigation real quick. On September 30th this year, when we approved the MOU, the board surplused all of the property that's at issue here. We're also updating our educational plant survey. This board's going to vote on that on next Tuesday to confirm this board's discussion to already surplus the property. We're updating our plant survey that we have on file with DOE to surplus all of that property. So that will not be an issue after January 13th. Well, we don't think it's an issue now based upon the board's September 30th action, but it will not be an issue as of January 13th under no circumstance. The other thing is, did we have the legal right to dispose of the property, or do we have to use it for education purposes? The town was involved in the lawsuit. They were the ones who sued us, and it was not a negative lawsuit in any way. They wanted to develop the property. They wanted to have a tax base, and they couldn't have it with the use restriction that said it had to be used for the educational purposes, right? So we got a settlement agreement between the town, the Hungerford Trust, and the school board to remove the use restriction. We paid $1 million to the Hungerford Trust. We had the use restriction removed. The court approved the settlement. So we think any lawsuit with respect to saying that there's a use restriction on that property is invalid, not meritorious. There is no use restriction on that property from our view. So the two bases that we were sued the last time are not going to happen. From that standpoint, I'm comfortable that we are in a position to dispose of the property pursuant to 1013-28. But that is the history. The town of Eatonville, we had a purchase and sale contract with them in 2010. We gave them 8 extensions to close over 9 years. They had developers. They did not do it. We then went out, entered into another purchase and sale agreement, agreed to put out an RFP on the town's behalf to get a developer to develop, to bring mixed use, to bring a tax base in there. We worked through, there was let's just be clear, there was an election, change in leadership at Eatonville, and the things that we were working on went away, and the town turned down the comprehensive plan changes. That's where we are.
Right. Member Byrd.
Yes, and I'm so glad that I'm following that, because that was kind of what, I totally forgot about the 8 extensions. That was what I was going to comment on. You know, I've been on this board along with Member Gallo and Chair Jacobs. This is our 7th year on this board, and at the beginning of our terms, that was when we were dealing with this, when they had the sale and they had the extensions, and then that fell through, and then we had the RFPs, and each time we were so excited because we thought we were getting there, and then it would fall apart, and then there was the fighting in the town, and then it would fall apart, and then so from my perspective of that history, you know, when people would come to me and say, well, why don't you just give the land to the town? Because in my perspective I've never been shown that the town will be able to productively take care of this property the way it needs to be taken care of. And not because they don't care about it, because they do, they're passionate, but there are competing interests, there are politics, there is just, everything that we've ever tried to do has always been a struggle. So when Dr. Phillips came in, and they're willing to put their reputation on the line for what is definitely going to be challenging. And quite honestly, I'm sitting here, when I was listening to the town council, I'm in my head thinking, oh my gosh, like, just stay with us, Dr. Phillips. Thank God for their heart for building community, because this is a challenging place to be, and they have a lot on the line. Let's think about this. This property is all eyes are on this property and what is going to happen to the future of this property. Nationwide eyes are on this project. They have a lot to risk here, and as they mentioned, you know, they have a 100-year legacy of building communities up. So to imagine them coming in here and not doing what is absolutely the best thing to build up this community, and to preserve it, and to, you know, figure out how to maintain it when it has had struggles, would just not make any sense. It would make no sense to think that they are not going to do absolutely everything possible to make that happen. So, you know, I stand in agreement with it. I am thankful for the vision. I'm thankful for their willingness to do it, and to recognize how special it is and how it deserves to have a name like the Dr. Phillips Charities behind it to move it forward. So I'm thankful, and I'll be standing in favor of it. As far as the other question, which was either letting it go forward or and then coming back to add it on. I don't have a problem with that necessarily. I think that would be fine with me. Thank you.
Okay. Member Salamanca?
Yeah, I was just going to briefly speak to that too. Defer to you, John, on the timing of this. I don't think any of us want to delay this, but I think my two questions on language would be, I don't know if it's right of first refusal or at least a right to purchase first, if that's in the future, right? Folks said that there's money in the town, and in the case that the property suddenly isn't used, it's not approved, maybe they have the right to purchase it first or something. I don't know what it is, and I defer to you on what would be good. The second one was on the good faith efforts. The definition feels really vague to me still. So I don't know if we could double down and be a little bit more explicit of one good faith efforts on both parts.
On the good faith efforts, could we put, and again, I don't know that it needs to be in the contract, but a requirement that the board be notified if the superintendent was going to exercise that, and then the board could choose. We want to discuss whether that amounts to a substantial or not.
So, Madam Chair, may I?
Yeah, of course. I'm sorry, John, you're recognized.
That's okay. So there's ways you could do this, like to the extent that, the superintendent, executes an amendment. I'm not, I'll talk with her, her being superintendent, sorry, pronouns again. To the extent the superintendent may not want that authority to, do amendments. And so if it's one of those where if the superintendent doesn't want the authority to do amendments, we could just excise that provision out. I don't think Dr. Phillips would have an issue with that, but we'll talk to their folks. And I'll talk with the superintendent to see whether or not she even wants the ability to engage in minor non-substantive amendments. With respect to good faith efforts, I will try to do what I can to see if there's any way to tighten that language up. Commercially reasonable good faith efforts, that's typically I know you don't like, I know you like a little bit more specificity in that. I'm not sure that we can get to the more specificity. However, I can ask them them being Dr. Phillips, to see whether or not there's more specific language we can agree to.
Yeah, I don't want to put an extra burden on it. I think it's the good faith clause is broad enough that I think if you go to court, most judges would say that you have to do a fact-finding analysis of all the things of who did what or not. To the degree that, good faith is, you do send them an email and notify them. You do go to a community meeting or the council meeting to talk. Like, there is some more lower, like, kind of really basic parts that I think we'd want to, because we have heard from folks say, they never reached out to us, they never talked to us, they never invited us to community. Whether true or not, this, just the way I don't want to go down the fact-intensive finding analysis and search up here in this board, I don't know that a judge would either, and that just opens up for it's very vague. So
yeah, a judge would have to get into, okay, did they contact the council versus just the town manager?
Yeah.
All of those types of things I understand that, but I will do what I can to see if we can tighten it.
Thank you.
With regard to some of these, there's just going to be documentation that, yes, you submitted an application and
certified letters to the town saying we are submitting this development plan. Certified letter to the town that says, hey, we understand that the comp plan may not and the zoning may not allow this current usage. We are asking to initiate that process.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff, if you have that, I think any court in the world is going to say that's a good faith, commercially reasonable effort.
That's why I was feeling more comfortable, because in most of the cases where we use that term, there is going to be clear documentation. Okay. Member Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have just a couple of questions. When was this contract in its current form going to be approved by the board? Was it at the next board meeting? Okay. If we make changes, then obviously it's not going to be on the next board meeting, Doc. Is that correct? Or would we have time to make changes if needed and still be able to approve it on the 9th? Because I think...
No, that was, so I will, and my team will diligently get to Dr. Phillips this week. We already are going to have on the agenda published today an agenda item. I say that, presuming the board gives us the go-ahead to enter into this arrangement here, gives the consensus to at least put it on the agenda for the next meeting. We will have a placeholder on the agenda for that. I will diligently then work with Dr. Phillips this week. My team will diligently work with them to try to change the language, get it done to the extent we can. If not, I'll inform, if we can, I give the board the changed document with the language indicated as changed. If we cannot, I'll indicate to the board they didn't agree to any changes or whatever the status is. And then the board can decide we have the current contract as is, or we have the contract as amended. You all can consider it at the next meeting and make the decision on it.
Perfect. Yep. Okay.
Thank you, John. I personally, my feelings on this is if any of these changes are going to delay us from approving this at the next board meeting, I would rather move forward with what we currently have and look at, because I do believe that there's going to be changes to the contract, and then look at what we can do after the fact. I don't want this delayed another month because we're nitpicking a part of contract. I want it on the docket. I want to get this approved so that the good work could get started. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Member Gallo. We don't take a vote during work sessions. So I think the direction is clear from the board on this. I do want to make one closing comment. I know this may sound not hypocritical, may sound insincere, but I do mean it sincerely. The fact that you all are here and the fact that that you are as passionate and as determined as you are is a very good thing. And I am very grateful that we have the kind of public servants in Eatonville that care this much and are, while you don't agree with us, and I understand that, I do appreciate the degree of commitment and passion that you have. And I think the citizens of Eatonville are lucky to have you. All right, is there anything further that we need to do before we can adjourn this meeting? Yes, Dr. Vasquez?
Okay, totally off topic, but today is our general counsel's birthday.
Oh, it is. Yeah, yeah.
And it's a big one.
Oh, wow.
Well, I thought it was 6-0, but he corrected me that it's only 5-0. So I think we should.
It's not that big of one. I'm sorry. So it's only halfway to 100, John.
Look great, John. Look great.
Only halfway to 100.
We should have had an AARP with his face on it.
Do you get that at 50? Yeah. Oh, wow, John. Yes, very exciting. All right. Thank you for pointing that out. All right, folks. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Meeting is now adjourned.